everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
What? I'm Guinevere. Fate. Chapter 176 to 196, Chapter 176, Stella. Mash, can we make it in time? Senpai, I'm already moving as fast as I can. But are you sure this is okay? Leaving the East Village to Arash, sending Guinevere and the others to provide scattered support, and just the two of us going to help Miss Ruler. Mash, this isn't about support. It's about letting you unleash Galahad's fury. I've already told Ruler through our master-servant contract not to be in a hurry to take Lancelot's head. After emerging from the underground Atlas Institute, the group split up. Only Da Vinci-chan, whose stamina was completely shot, remained in the desert. She planned to accompany Nitocris to the Sun King's tomb to apologize on behalf of the group for being unable to keep their appointment. As for the Wild Holmes, he refused to leave the underground facility, merely repeating his warning to be wary of Dr. Romani and wishing the group good luck. Mash was in the driver's seat of Unit 1, the vehicle Da Vinci-chan had built, while Ritsuka continuously supplied it with energy. Senpai, will your mana really last that long? The distance from the Atlas Institute to just outside New Camelot City was over 100 kilometers, a journey that would normally take Unit 1 3 hours. Given the vehicle's immense mana consumption, Ritsuka shouldn't have been able to sustain it. But as her mana drained at an alarming rate, Ritsuka finally understood the nature of the divine protection she had received from her contract with Guinevere. It was the mana absorption property of the replica Holy Sword. Ritsuka could slowly draw mana from the atmosphere, or make an effort to grab the monsters Unit 1 ran over, rapidly replenishing her own reserves from their blood. Mash, we'll be fine now. Whether we make it in time depends on the route you take. Senpai, leave it to me. The mana from the sea demons tasted foul, but Ritsuka endured it. Seeing that Ritsuka could recover this way, Mash shouted her affirmation. Meanwhile, 7 colored beams of light continued to streak across the sky. They originated from the highest peak of East Village, scattering toward New Camelot City. Viewed from above, Mash and Ritsuka appeared to be chasing these rainbow lights. Senpai, the sky. Over East Village. Mash, focus on our task. We've already decided to trust Arash. Having learned more about the Lion King, Ritsuka's trust in Guinevere had deepened. She believed Guinevere must know even more about the Lion King's secrets. For instance, Guinevere's choice to leave Arash behind likely meant she had confirmed he possessed the strength to withstand the Lion King's divine punishment. I see. I guess I was getting worked up over nothing. The environment within the underground Atlas Institute hadn't supported Chaldea's holographic communications. Holmes's warning had been delivered without Dr. Romani's knowledge. However, when Dr. Romani's projection reappeared, Ritsuka had no intention of hiding the matter. She mentioned Holmes, the warning, and the 2004 Holy Grail War. Dr. Romani, we all trust you. We'll wait for you to tell us the story behind this in your own time. As her words faded, the anomaly over East Village began to take shape. Even from dozens of kilometers away, Mash and Ritsuka saw the clouds in the sky scatter, revealing an inverted tower of light descending from above. According to Dr. Romani's recent warning, this tower of light's mana level exceeded 3 million. He had said the highest tier noble phantasms had mana levels between 1,000 and 3,000, which was why he dismissed his own anxiety as getting worked up over nothing. But now the Tower of Light had truly formed and was about to fall. Mash, Ritsuka and even Guinevere and Lancelot, still locked in combat, pulled back from each other, their gazes fixed on the sky above East Village. See? This is the Lion King's divine punishment. Ruler, the Lion King doesn't care if we die, not now that he is about to gather the people he needs. You lured me out, but didn't he use me to find the mountain people's most important and hidden village? Is that so? And then what? Guinevere rested her holy sword on the ground, its blade still wreathed in golden execution flames. At Guinevere's words, Lancelot's cold demeanor faltered for a moment, and his eyes narrowed slightly. Then, without waiting for the Lion King's divine punishment to descend, their swords clashed once more. The sword auras they unleashed continuously tore apart the surrounding wasteland. Thanks to the blessing of Rampage, Lancelot constantly interspersed his noble phantasm releases into his sword strikes, keeping Guinevere on the defensive. Fortunately, Guinevere's holy sword was of high quality, so there was no risk of it being severed by Lancelot's plasma cutter. As they traded blows, the Tower of Light above East Village truly began to descend, carrying enough power to obliterate the entire mountain peak. 10,000 meters, 1,000 meters, 500 meters. Just as the Tower of Light's apex was about to reach the summit of East Village's mountain, everyone in the singularity heard a single word, Stella. Then, a shooting star streaked against the wind, striking the tower's tip. The light of a firefly had successfully extinguished the brilliance of the moon. Ruler, is this your confidence? But a noble phantasm of this magnitude surely can't be fired in quick succession, can it? As the Tower of Light shattered and a second sun seemed to appear in the sky, Lancelot was momentarily dazed. In that instant, Guinevere struck, knocking off the helmet he always wore. You're right. But the Lion King's Holy Lance release also can't be fired in quick succession, especially not a Holy Lance in its restraint release state. The Holy Lance's restraint release normally requires the approval of several Round Table Knights. But the Lion King is different. She has ascended to godhood through the Holy Lance's influence, becoming one with the weapon itself. She needs no one's approval to unleash its full power. Even so, even with a god's mana, the Holy Lance cannot be fired repeatedly. But that arrow came from Arash, didn't it? According to his legend, after firing his ultimate arrow, his body disintegrated. How will you face the Lion King's next attack? Agravain said your godlike state only allows you to fight the Lion King in her normal form. Hearing this, Guinevere tilted her head slightly. If Lancelot were truly loyal to the Lion King, he wouldn't be asking such calm questions. He should be more hysterical, demanding her death at any cost. But surprise or not, Guinevere only swung her sword faster. Lancelot's withdrawal would be her greatest aid, wouldn't it? Sir Lancelot, let me tell you something, the King of Knights' holy sword is in my hands. When the time comes to release its restraints, you'll have to give me your approval too. With a single slash, she severed a few strands of Lancelot's hair. To him, the whereabouts of the sword of promised victory were far more shocking than the Lion King's divine punishment being repelled. But then, the inversion blessing on him activated again, and the two resumed their clash of unparalleled martial skill. Guinevere had dueled Gawain for a full day and night. Against Lancelot, she could last even longer. Lancelot lacked Gawain's knightlessness blessing, and had far less stamina. As time wore on, Lancelot's defeat seemed inevitable. But 2 hours later an unexpected interruption occurred. Gawain and Agravain arrived, their faces etched with impatience. Mash and Ritsuka were only 2 minutes behind, plummeting from the sky. Chapter 177, Chapter 177, Gawain, King Hassan, Angel of Death's Call. 1,300 words. Mash, Lancelot is all yours. Under the scorching sun, in the middle of the wasteland, the wreckage of the wooden flying chariot burned fiercely. Mash and Ritsuka had just climbed out of the crater their landing had created. Protected by Mash's shield, they could survive a fall from 10,000 meters without injury, let alone a brief flight using the chariot's aerial function. After withdrawing her sword and retreating, Guinevere entrusted Lancelot to Mash. Her gaze then swept toward Gawain and Agravain. A 2-on-1 fight would be troublesome, but Guinevere wouldn't lose. She could quickly take Agravain's life, then get locked in a protracted battle with Gawain that would be difficult to win. Sir Agravain, thank you for bringing Sir Gawain with you. You may return to the city now. Go. I promise to let you stay by the Lion King's side until the very end. Her current plan hadn't accounted for them, but since they were already here, what was the harm in offering a little thanks? Unfortunately, Agravain and Gawain were close brothers, so this minor attempt at provocation had no effect. Agravain raised his spear. Gawain drew his sword. But the evening bell tolled. What's this? The scorching sun still hung high in the sky, yet dark clouds began to gather. As the evening bell rang, its sound seemed to come from everywhere, resonating directly in their hearts. Even those who wished to ignore it found themselves unable to shut it out. So early. Sheathing her sword, Guinevere muttered to herself. She paid no mind to the frowning Agravain and Gawain, nor to Lancelot, who was already battling Mash. She knew First Hassan had promised that once the Chaldea group learned everything from the Atlas Institute, he would strike down Gawain. The evening bell had tolled earlier than Guinevere expected, but this was merely him fulfilling his promise. Just as the first chime faded and dark clouds obscured the scorching sun, a man appeared, striding openly into view. He was powerfully built, standing over 2 meters tall, his head covered by a horned skull mask. Clad in black armor and a black cloak, he wielded a great sword. He walked with steady, deliberate steps, making no attempt to conceal his arrival. Who are you? Hassan-I Sabah. The Hassan-I Sabah order had spanned 19 generations, including the Hassan of intoxicated smoke, the Hassan of the 100 faces, the Hassan of the cursed arm, and the Hassan of serenity. Yet only the first Hassan could introduce himself with that name alone. Or was it the doomed star he sensed shining? Gawain's sword tip instinctively turned toward First Hassan, and he looked ready to unleash the sword of revolving victory. So it's just another mere assassin. Even with the nightlessness blessing, even with his stats tripled under the midday sun, Gawain couldn't dispel the bone-chilling cold that the death knell had instilled in his heart. Your Grace, First Hassan, Guinevere began, I know Gawain's life is your promised price to Hassan of intoxicated smoke. But he is still a knight of the Round Table, and only a knight of the Round Table may claim his life. So I must humbly ask you this, would you be willing to grant my shameless request? I ask that you only sever the nightlessness blessing from Gawain, and leave his life, and his sins, to me. First Hassan remained silent, unmoved by Gawain's taunts or Guinevere's plea. He continued his steady advance, raising his sword in a single, fluid motion. In that one movement alone, Guinevere glimpsed the future path of her own swordsmanship. She saw that her skills were still far from their limit. It was a sword style more flawless than Lancelot's, condensing countless understandings of the blade into a single, perfect form. This sword declared death, and none could escape. However, to face this sword directly, Guinevere had at least one option, unleashing Avalon, the scabbard of absolute defense. Of course, Avalon was not in Guinevere's possession at this moment. So she could only watch First Hassan's advance, thinking that if he insisted on taking Gawain's life, she would have no choice but to try and avenge him. It was unreasonable, a blatant display of favoritism, but if she simply stood by and did nothing after Gawain was killed, Guinevere knew she would never find peace. Yet, how could Guinevere's words possibly sway First Hassan from the prey he had chosen? He continued his relentless approach, steadily increasing the pressure of death upon Gawain. During this time, Gawain stopped Agravain from joining him, and after hearing Guinevere's words, let out a calm breath. So I can still be considered a knight of the Round Table. Then let me, in this final moment, face a duel to the death as a knight of the Round Table once more. Ruler, Queen, this is a one-on-one duel between myself and Lord Hassan. There is nothing dishonorable that could tarnish a knight's honor. If I die, you need not avenge me. For the Lion King's will, Gawain had chosen loyalty, betraying the knightly code he had always upheld. Because of this, Guinevere had never seen him smile since they first met. But now he was smiling. His breathing was calm, and he could face death with tranquility. Queen, with you here, the king will eventually be corrected. So we can die in peace. Did you know? Those were Mordred's last words to us. She trusted you, and after spending dozens of days together, we came to trust her too. She was a worthy knight who truly revered the king. As he spoke, First Hassan drew very close to Gawain. The chill in his heart intensified, but as he faced Gawain, body slightly bowed, fully prepared to unleash the sword of revolving victory. First Hassan halted his advance and allowed Azrael to begin glowing in his hand. At that moment, the second bell tolled, and First Hassan posed his final question to Gawain. Listen to this bell. It tolls the end of your fate. First Hassan's voice was incredibly deep. As he spoke, his sword descended, allowing him to slip into the beam of light from Gawain's attack, a blast capable of incinerating everything. When the beam shot into the sky, scattering sunlight across the land, Guinevere raised her sword again, and Agravain leveled his spear at First Hassan. But their eyes were fixed on Gawain's liberated smile, and First Hassan's towering figure vanishing into thin air. It could only be said that Guinevere, in her ruler class, was still leagues below a grand servant. She knew she couldn't win against First Hassan's angel of death, nor could she, even with her senses fully extended, detect where he had disappeared. A ruler can't win, and a caster probably can't either. So can I only rely on my saber or berserker forms? When I used my caster noble phantasm to switch forms, those two were my strongest. She had watched First Hassan take Gawain's life. She had watched First Hassan escape and vanish. Guinevere was lamenting her current body's lack of strength, but she was also making excuses for herself. She knew full well that in her saber class, she was a grand candidate, and in her berserker class, she genuinely held the grand title. Ha! Guinevere exhaled, suppressing the frustration in her heart. First Hassan had shown her no deference, but Gawain's final words, relaying Mordred's message, had brought her enough joy to compensate. She glanced at Mash and Lancelot, they were still fighting. Then she looked at Agravain. Ah, no need for words. Agravain silently sheathed his weapon, and began walking back toward the Lion King. But on his face, Guinevere saw a smile, as if, in his heart, Agravain had already glimpsed the moment of his own liberation. Chapter 178, Chapter 178, Mash, Lancelot, you've gone too far. 1246 words. Ugh. Dad, you knew about the Holy Lance, yet you still serve the Lion King. You know this is wrong. Dad? Even if Galahad is inside you, you can't just call me Dad. And you're too preachy. If it weren't for that ruler woman, even Mordred would have stayed with the Lion King until the very end. As for the Holy Lance, that was the first thing the Lion King explained to us when she summoned us round table knights. Those who couldn't accept it left long ago. Sword and shield clashed relentlessly. Lancelot's noble phantasm release had no effect on Mash's shield. After Guinevere's special training, Mash showed no signs of losing, at least not yet. She could even occasionally counterattack with her shield. By now, Mash possessed not only Galahad's gift but also the strength she had gained through several singularities. Woman cough. You, the servant favored by Galahad, we have already decided to oppose this era. Even if it means slaughtering the cross that succeeded us, even if we sense something inhuman in our king's actions. Due to the inversion of blessing, Lancelot lacked familial affection, making him more composed when Mash called him Dad. During the battle, he noticed Sir Gawain's withdrawal and Sir Agravain's smiling retreat, leaving him alone, surrounded by Mash and Guinevere. Lancelot knew his situation was hopeless. His only chance would be if the Lion King unleashed a divine punishment on this location or personally sallied forth from the city to attack, but both were impossible. So he became unusually talkative, growing increasingly tempted to tear his own hair out. Galahad and Guinevere, the two people he could never handle in life, were both here. Aargh. Senpai, I'm furious. This man is infuriating. He knows the king is wrong, and he knows that persisting means his own death, yet he still refuses to repent. Senpai, Galahad, who once lent me his power, is no longer within me, but let me speak for him. Lancelot, you've gone too far. Is it because you betrayed her once that you're now trying to compensate with blind loyalty? A fierce shield bash followed. The brief moment of nostalgia and daze Lancelot felt upon hearing himself being scolded left him vulnerable. He was sent flying, only to be kicked back by Guinevere, who worried he might declare, "This is my escape route." After realizing she was no match for the first Hassan, and that he showed her no deference, Guinevere managed to rationalize the situation, but her mood was far from its usual good. Exactly, Lancelot. I don't remember the King of Knights' most virtuous knight acting like this. The Knight of the Lake should speak up when the king has doubts and fight against her when she is wrong. Is blind loyalty to the king truly the way of the Knight of the Lake? Without the inversion, Lancelot might have truly awakened after being repeatedly berated by Mash and Guinevere, perhaps even betraying his king for a woman once more. But the inversion had locked his loyalty in place. The dual torment of body and soul no longer offered him release, it only fueled his inner frenzy, intensifying the corruption festering in his heart. Dad! Stop this! Another shield bash struck him, a pain that pierced his flesh and echoed through his bones. Dad, if you don't stop, I'll use all of Camelot City to crush you next. Mash's noble phantasm release was typically used for defense, but it could indeed be used to smash enemies. However, how Mash might wield her noble phantasm was irrelevant for now. As Lancelot climbed out of the cratered earth and cleansed himself of filth with mana, his silver-white armor faded to a sinister purple-black. Arondite, the unfading light of the lake, had fully fallen from sacred to demonic. And with each heart-wrenching cry of Dad, Lancelot completely sealed off his heart. He fell from saber to berserker, his very spirit origin twisting and changing. Mash, give Sir Lancelot his release, Guinevere said, her voice heavy. It seems he couldn't, and didn't want to, overcome the inversion blessing. Guinevere had learned about Lancelot's condition from Agravain, but even without that knowledge, she could have figured out most of it herself. Still, she had clung to the last shred of hope that she could persuade him to switch sides, only abandoning it when he finally cast aside his reason, and was driven mad by her own provocations. At that moment, Mash's fury intensified. A voice in her heart told her there was no need for more words. Anything left to say could wait until after she had beaten Lancelot half to death. And so, Senpai, by my command spell, I order you, Mash Kirillite, beat Lancelot senseless. By my command spell. By my. That was the great thing about Chaldea's master, she recovered 3 command spells every day. If she was certain there would be no more major battles today, she could use them without restraint. As she watched Mash, empowered by 3 intensified command spells and a fury-fueled clarity, gradually overwhelm the class-swapped Lancelot, Guinevere's mind drifted elsewhere. Since command spells regenerate, could I have Ritsuka use them on me for a few days to max out the mana capacity of my replica holy sword? The thought struck her, and Guinevere slapped her forehead. She knew it would work, but she'd realized it too late. Today, they had sent Gawain and Lancelot into retreat. Tomorrow or the day after at the latest, they would launch the final assault on New Camelot City. Mash, need a hand. Guinevere called out. The sooner we kill your dad, the sooner we can go back to sleep. The words had barely left her lips when she realized their ambiguity. To Lancelot, at least, they must have sounded dripping with mockery and double meaning. Even though he had abandoned rational thought, he still remembered that the one using the King of Knights' body was Guinevere. In his timeline, he had been seduced by Guinevere's beauty. But if Guinevere hadn't seen the King of Knights and Morgan sharing a bed, she wouldn't have had a mental breakdown and sought comfort from him in the first place. Of course, he and Guinevere had remained close friends in spirit until the very end. Even after the King of Knights' death and Guinevere's retreat to a convent to live out her days, they had never so much as held hands. But that didn't stop him from believing Guinevere wanted to sleep with Mash. And for Guinevere, inhabiting the King of Knights' body, to sleep with Mash would be a grave desecration of the King of Knights herself. It would completely violate the absolute loyalty bestowed upon him by his inversion. Arrrrrrr. He could no longer form human words, yet he still shoved Mash aside and charged at the king with absolute loyalty. It seemed that, to him, killing the king was the only way to prevent her from being desecrated. But Lancelot's choice gave Guinevere the justification she needed to act. Now she could stand tall before Mash and claim she hadn't intentionally stolen her prey. This sword is the sword of destined judgment. Having abandoned all thought, his holy sword sealed by his berserker class, Lancelot took the full force of the noble phantasm directly to the face. A moment later, Mash crouched beside Lancelot's smoking, completely immobile body, and poked his cheek with a finger. "Hey, you idiot dad. You're not dead yet, are you?" Chapter 179, Mash, Ritsuka, Go Conquer the Sun King. 1289 words. Lancelot. He truly was a noble knight to the very end. Even Lancelot, after taking the full brunt of Guinevere's noble phantasm release, only managed to hold on for a little while longer, just long enough to leave his last words. When Guinevere and the others had finished clearing out the surrounding enforcement knights, and followed his final instructions to a specific location in the desert, they found a large group of elderly, weak women and children. Previously, Lancelot had been a guerrilla knight tasked with eliminating resistance fighters. But it seemed he had only killed those who actively fought back, refusing to carry out the Lion King's extermination order. "Mr. Tawaratota, we'll need to trouble you to use your noble phantasm again. Miss Ruler, you're too kind. This servant of the banquet loves nothing more than sharing a lively meal with everyone." Inexhaustible bale in this singularity, where the world was nearing its end, this noble phantasm was arguably more valuable than any holy lance or holy sword. It was thanks to this artifact that the singularity could sustain its current population. Guinevere, Mash, Ritsuka, Tawaratota, and numerous Hassans were now busy working in the refugee camp. Watching the swirling sandstorms that seemed to conceal the camp and the sphinxes patrolling the perimeter, Guinevere wondered when Lancelot had managed to connect with the Sun King. She felt she owed the Sun King yet another debt of gratitude. "Ritsuka, can you contact Da Vinci-chan? Didn't she go to the Sun King's temple? Why hasn't she returned yet?" They had defeated Lancelot around 3 p.m. Da Vinci-chan had left for the Sun King's territory at 11 a.m. By the time everyone arrived at the refugee camp, it was already 7 p.m. After being gone for so long, they should have heard from Da Vinci-chan by now. Aha! Did Miss Ruler miss me? Another vehicle arrived, laden with fruits and vegetables, carrying a boisterous Da Vinci-chan. In the passenger seat, the lightly dressed Nitocris was covering her ears with both hands. Nitocris's arrival, and the fact that she seemed to already know about this place, confirmed for Guinevere that Lancelot had indeed been in contact with the Sun King. Smiling, Guinevere patted Mash's shoulder. Seeing Mash's own smile of relief, she knew Lancelot had managed to redeem himself somewhat in her daughter's eyes. "Da Vinci-chan, did you bring all these gifts because the Sun King has forgiven us for skipping the banquet? Will he help us in the final battle? And what about this singularity's holy grail?" As Guinevere patted Mash's shoulder, Ritsuka had already rushed forward. She called for the Hassans to help unload the supplies while peppering Da Vinci-chan with questions. But Da Vinci-chan's face immediately fell, and she glanced at Nitocris, who seemed hesitant to meet Ritsuka's gaze. "Never mind, I'll explain," Da Vinci-chan said. "The Sun King was furious that you didn't attend the banquet. So he had me pack up all the food prepared for the feast and bring it back. Nitocris-chan is coming over. The Sun King demanded that we evacuate the refugees immediately. If we don't, he'll have her send every last refugee who overstays in the desert to the underworld." Da Vinci-chan only answered the first of Ritsuka's barrage of questions, but once that was answered, the rest became unnecessary. If that was the Sun King's stance, then they would have to conquer his territory before dealing with the Lion King. Chaldea's ultimate mission was to retrieve the King of Magecraft's Holy Grail that had fallen into the singularity, and then restore the distorted foundation of human order. The former concerned the Sun King, the latter the Lion King. Only in this singularity were these two objectives located in separate places, at least for now. "Ruler, are you saying we should conquer the Sun King's territory before the Lion King's? His current order is harsh, but Mash and I have met him before. I believe he's still someone we can cooperate with. The Holy Grail is useless to him, and he doesn't seem to care much about it. Inside the small tent, Guinevere, Mash, Ritsuka, and the others gathered. Even Nitocris had been allowed in, though she was currently locked in a staring contest with Serenity. Ritsuka Fujimaru, truly Chaldea's succubus, the most sinful woman in human history. Listen, Ritsuka, Guinevere said, you all can figure out what to do about the Sun King. For now, I need to focus on storing mana in the Holy Sword to prepare for the final battle. Besides, haven't you already made your judgment? The Sun King is someone you can cooperate with, and for the sake of the refugees here, you must meet him first. He wants all the refugees evacuated before sunset, which is impossible. Since it's an impossible task, and he isn't a cruel or bloodthirsty man, he must have another motive. For example, maybe he wants you to sleep with Nitocris to win her over. Ah! Even if Ritsuka were to serve me in bed, I would never betray the Sun King. The joke had drawn out Nitocris's true feelings, leaving Mash stunned and sighing in disappointment. Serenity's gaze on Nitocris intensified as she declared, Ritsuka and I have kissed. Twice in a row. At that moment, perhaps because night was falling and the desert could no longer retain its heat, Guinevere felt a chill run down her scalp, as if a ghostly wind were blowing through the tent. However, the tension broke as Ritsuka stepped before Nitocris, placed her hands firmly on her shoulders, and said seriously, I think the Sun King's true intention is for you to bring us to him, and ensure we don't leave without saying goodbye this time. The warmth from Ritsuka's hands seeped into Nitocris's slightly cool shoulders. Nitocris turned her head away, a faint blush coloring her cheeks, as the posture she had so often forced straight to maintain her dignity finally relaxed. But her mind hadn't turned to mush. She considered Guinevere's assessment and Ritsuka's words, quickly nodding in agreement as she reached the same conclusion. The Sun King she knew was tyrannical, but if he truly intended to kill them, he wouldn't have gone through such elaborate motions. Besides, he had previously sheltered these refugees. I understand. I will take you to see the king. This time, you are not allowed to run. With that, the serious meeting drew to a close. The next step was to decide who would go to the audience with the Sun King. At this point, Guinevere recalled another of her previous understandings. She didn't want to bow and scrape before the Sun King, nor did she want to risk a confrontation with him. Her way of repaying the Sun King's favor was to stay away, allowing him to focus his full attention on Mash and the others. Yes, in Guinevere's memory, their journey would lead them to a direct confrontation with the Sun King himself, and they would have to kill the shadow of a demon god pillar he had summoned from the Holy Grail. Miss Ruler, are you really not going? I trust you all. I also want to see if you can repair this singularity without me. Let me tell you something you don't know yet. The next singularity awaiting you will be even harder to conquer. If you can impress me even more, I'll leave something behind for you so you can summon me smoothly. If you still need my help then, that is. Guinevere truly had no desire to go to the Sun King's court, but she would stay here. If Mash and Ritsuka truly couldn't handle it, she would still intervene to rescue them. Chapter 180, A Video Call with Her Other Self. 1401 words. Merlin really is amazing. Outside the refugee camp, Guinevere found a sand dune, and initiated another call with her other self from a different world. This time, however, was different. They could now see each other through a video call. It's strange, isn't it? Talking to yourself. Speaking of which, I'd love to try using Leah's body sometime. On the other side of the screen, Caster Guinevere was eating grilled skewers. Beside her, Leah was there, Mordred was there, and Morgan was there too, a perfect family scene. Seeing this, Ruler Guinevere felt a mix of contentment and envy. She wished she could be there, eating grilled skewers with everyone. Other me, do you find it amusing to be envious of yourself? Totally. On the other side of the call, they were in a small, cozy living room. As Caster Guinevere spoke, she took another bite of a steaming grilled skewer. While the two Guineveres remained composed, Leah, Mordred, and Morgan's emotions were far more complex. Mordred, in particular, had just bid farewell to ruler Guinevere in the Jerusalem region. The moment her memories returned to the throne of heroes, Morgan had summoned her. The sense of strangeness she felt was overwhelming. Queen Mother, how far have you progressed over there? Have you met that world's father yet? Not yet. Only Agravain remains by her side. Once Mash and the others return from the Sun King's court, it'll be time for the final battle. I'm sorry, Queen Mother. I originally intended to. It's fine. I don't need your help anyway. And seeing her laughing and enjoying life, sniffle. I just want to hug you again. On the sand dune, under the moonlight, Guinevere sat alone. She was simultaneously channeling mana into the replica holy sword, and expending even more to maintain the video call with the rainbow gem. Her crying was deliberate, but Caster Guinevere's embrace of Mordred was entirely genuine. This time, Mordred ignored her mother's words. Since arriving in the modern era, she had started dressing in even more revealing outfits, hot pants, a cute top, and a striking hairstyle that perfectly complemented her heroic demeanor. She looked every bit the cool girl. Hey, other me, Caster Guinevere said, I'm the one who allowed Mordred to dress like this, you know. Haven't you noticed? I'm dressed pretty casually myself, eating skewers, drinking beer. And no one else is coming into this room. But what about you? Can anyone else see the projection screen you've set up? Other me, do you really think I'd allow such a thing? Ruler Guinevere retorted from the desert. Right, I know I'm the pettiest of us all. I'll go find Merlin later, and have him resynchronize our memories. That way, I can experience the desert, and you can feel what it's like to hug Mordred again. By the way, want to feel what it's like to touch Leah? No need. I've already bathed in Leah's body several times. I've even... Ruler Guinevere didn't finish her sentence. Morgan, who had been watching from the side, burst out laughing. As for Artoria, the body's actual owner, the beercan slipped from her grasp, nearly crashing onto her. It was only thanks to her exceptional instinct skill that her body reacted faster than her mind, catching it just in time. Guinevere, what did you do with my body? Leah demanded. Leah, do you really want me to say it out loud? Ruler Guinevere teased. Leah fell silent, her face flushing red. She slowly shook her head. Essentially, it was just Guinevere personally bathing her, something she had already experienced hundreds, if not thousands of times. Other me, it seems you have some memories I'd envy too. Caster Guinevere exclaimed. Mordred was still held tightly in Caster Guinevere's arms, her cheeks being playfully pinched. But even across worlds, Leah couldn't vent her flustered anger on Ruler Guinevere. Couldn't she at least grab Caster Guinevere by the collar and lift her up in embarrassment? Besides, Leah had already had quite a bit to drink, and her inhibitions were rapidly fading. Sister, help me out. I want to use Guinevere's body too. How could Morgan, who was thoroughly enjoying the drama, refuse such a request? Ignoring the video call, they handed the communication device to Mordred. Morgan and Leah each grabbed one of Caster Guinevere's arms, and dragged her out of the camera's view. The once lively little room fell quiet, leaving only Mordred and Ruler Guinevere staring at each other through the screen. Mordred, don't say another word of apology. Just tell me about your life over there, Ruler Guinevere said gently. When this is all over, would you prefer to have two queen mothers pinning you down, one on each side? Or would you rather we fuse completely, with only one queen mother to pin you down? The human mind excels at making connections, and Mordred's imagination immediately ran wild with Guinevere's words. She let out a silly, dazed laugh and started rolling on the carpet like a big cat. After a moment, her voice drifted back from off-camera. Queen Mother, can I have both? You could both spend time with me first, and then fuse after we've all adjusted. Pfft, Mordred, you're so greedy, Ruler Guinevere chuckled. But what actually happens will depend on Merlin and Sister Morgan. Got it. I'll go beg Mother later. She's much easier to persuade than you are. Besides, she still feels guilty about messing up my succession. Mordred, are you going to say to Sister Morgan, Mother, you wouldn't want me to dig up your dark past, would you? Queen Mother is still Queen Mother, I see. I saw that exact line in one of the little art books you drew over here. Did you know? Your Yuri art books are bestsellers. And with the excavation of so many artifacts from Father's era, they've proven to the world that Father was actually a girl. Many readers of the art books already believe they're the true history. They've even started calling the you from over here a prophetess. Guinevere listened, surprised. She knew time flowed differently between their worlds, but she hadn't imagined that in the less than 2 days since their last memory sync, such a major development could have happened over there. Taking a deep breath, Guinevere's smile widened. She reached out as if to pat Mordred's head through the screen. That's for the best. If we can truly change the world's perception from the modern era, your father can finally let go of her wish to return to the past and alter the legend. As her words faded, Guinevere heard sounds from what must have been the room next to Mordred's, the sounds of her other self struggling, followed by the tearing of fabric. If Leah was merely holding Guinevere down so Morgan could undress her properly, Leah wouldn't feel jealous of Morgan. Besides, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands, especially since the Guinevere over there had no real intention of resisting. Soon, a grinning Morgan returned to the small room, having found a little amusement in her role as a dragon's accomplice. But after her brief exertion in the modern world, her white shirt, already stretched taut across her chest, now looked even more disheveled. Guinevere, that necklace of mine, the one that absorbed the dragon heart from Albion's spirit tomb, and was sent to the throne of heroes along with your previous memories, isn't it in your hands now? No, it's not. Another version of me must have it, but I don't know which one. In any case, you must never forget your promise to me. The other Morgan is still waiting for your arrival. I know, sister. With that final reminder from Morgan, the call ended. The promised memory synchronization was postponed due to the ongoing battle on her end. Guinevere's attention returned to her surroundings. She could sense a vast, corrupting mana emanating from the direction of the Sun King's grave. Even from over 10 kilometers away, she could clearly see a golden demon god pillar stretching to the heavens. Mash, Da Vinci-chan, can they really win? Due to their previous hostilities, assassinations, and the abduction of their master, none of the assassins, including Serenity, had accompanied them. As for the servant whose noble phantasm was an inexhaustible bale of rice, he was forbidden from taking such a risk. Chapter 181, Guinevere's Grail Ascension. 1,318 words. Sanzang. She's here. In the game, Sanzang had been a guest in New Camelot City until just before Chaldea's arrival. She departed then, claiming she needed to return home. In the game's timeline, she had reached the end of this singularity and informed Chaldea's party of this fact upon meeting them. Afterward, she consistently aided Chaldea. However, in this world line altered by Guinevere's presence, they had rescued Serenity much earlier, causing them to miss their encounter with Sanzang on the road. But individuals existing within a singularity don't simply vanish. Just when Guinevere thought Sanzang wouldn't appear, she unexpectedly emerged. Now, as the demon god pillar rose and Guinevere worried whether Mash and the others could handle it, she saw a colossal Buddha's palm descend from the sky in the distance. 5 Elements Mountain, Buddha Palm. That being truly is one of the pinnacles of the Type Moon world. Even with just a fraction of their power borrowed by Sanzang, she completely vaporized a demon god pillar empowered by the Sun King, and bearing the name R.A. Guinevere didn't understand why Sanzang had appeared here, and used her noble phantasm to aid Chaldea. But those questions could wait until they returned. For now, she simply continued to watch, wondering if the Sun King would continue his trial. In the game, when the Lion King raised the wall of light, and the singularity began to shrink, it was the Sun King who shattered it by smashing his temple complex into it, clearing the final path for Chaldea's party. From a distance, Guinevere sensed an even more immense presence and faintly smelled the familiar scent of the Holy Grail. Just as she could barely restrain herself, the colossal aura receded, and Ritsuka's voice reached her through their master-servant contract. "Ruler, His Majesty the Sun King has acknowledged us. He has agreed to cooperate, and is willing to lend us the Sphinx Legion. Also, he said you need the Holy Grail, and told me to give it to you." Guinevere didn't know what the Sun King had seen, but receiving the Holy Grail prompted her to perform a king-to-king salute in the direction of his temple complex. Unlike the Holy Grails of the regular world, the grails scattered by the demon god king that created the singularities in FGO were merely high-density mana crystals. Possessing one meant having a virtually limitless supply of mana, and an enhanced spirit origin. For Guinevere, obtaining that Holy Grail meant she no longer had to painstakingly accumulate mana. She could now go all out against the Lion King. "Ritsuka, when will you all be back?" "Right away. We've finished our discussions with the Sun King. We'll launch the final assault tomorrow." He reconfirmed that the Lion King's preparations are in their final stages. "All right." With the Holy Grail in mind, Guinevere gazed at the replica holy sword in her hand, and continued pouring mana into it. Since she'd already started, she might as well see it through. Besides, Ritsuka's mana supply was immense. Even if Guinevere completely exhausted her own mana, she could recover fully in just 3 hours. However, this didn't mean all the mana she channeled came solely from Ritsuka. To put it simply, Ritsuka's mana acted as a catalyst, drawing even more mana from the counter-force into Guinevere's body. Stretching lazily, she remained on the sand dunes for a long, long time, until Ritsuka and the others returned in their vehicle. Guinevere went to greet them, and Ritsuka immediately thrust the Holy Grail into her arms. Guinevere watched as she absorbed the Grail directly into her body. In that instant, Guinevere's depleted mana was fully replenished. Her Spirit Origin's quality soared. In game terms, it was a Spirit Origin Ascension, raising her level cap. On her servant status screen, Guinevere saw that all her stats had increased, even surpassing the levels she had when Merlin was her master. Strength, A+, Agility, A+, Endurance, A+, Mana, EX, Luck, A+, Noble Phantasm, A+++. TSK. To think possessing the Holy Grail would even raise the rank of my second Noble Phantasm. Is it because its name is the Holy Grail, tying it by fate to the Lord? The boost from the Holy Grail far exceeded Guinevere's expectations. Compared to the increase in her Noble Phantasm's rank, having all her stats at A rank or higher seemed almost trivial. "Ritsuka, I must also thank you for your trust in giving me the Holy Grail to use. I thought you'd send it back to Chaldea immediately after obtaining it. Ruler, where did you get that idea? Is it because we never used the Grail in the previous singularities?" But that was because the singularities themselves were caused by the Grail. Obtaining it meant the problem was solved, so we had no need to borrow its power. But this singularity is different. It's essentially another world sustained by the Lion King's Holy Lance, isn't it? Yes. Guinevere's question had been light-hearted, born from her elation, but Ritsuka's reply was delivered with a frown. In response, Guinevere pulled her into a serious embrace, stroking her head with a mixture of admiration and heartache. Setting aside her lecherous tendencies, Ritsuka Fujimaru, originally just an ordinary person, had truly pushed herself to the limit. She had unhesitatingly shouldered the immense burden of saving all of humanity. And for now, no other master could do what she was doing. No matter how arduous the path ahead, you must keep moving forward. I mentioned before that I'd give you a keepsake to ensure you can summon me reliably. I'll give it to you now. Guinevere had always intended to give Ritsuka the keepsake eventually. Her agreement with Morgan meant she still had to go to the Fairy Kingdom, so she planned to give it to her before she left. However, her current elation prompted her to act now, releasing her pent-up affection for Ritsuka, and deciding to give her the keepsake ahead of schedule. In her past life, she had also been Ritsuka in the game, experiencing her hardships and perseverance firsthand. Just as with Artoria, once Guinevere confirmed this was the earnest Ritsuka, and not the dangerous Gudako, her affection for her was already at its maximum. Over the decades of her new life, however, Guinevere's affection for Ritsuka had transformed into the fondness an elder feels for a junior. Ritsuka, want to sleep together? It was a joke, but since they were both girls, it wouldn't be a big deal as long as nothing strange happened. Yet, her embrace and jest reached the ears of Mash, as well as Serenity, Nitocris, and others who were approaching. Mash immediately separated them. Though Mash didn't yet understand jealousy, a profound sense of crisis welled up within her, seemingly accompanied by a warning from Galahad. He seemed to be saying, "Mash, keep a close eye on your senpai. Guinevere is a total lesbian." Separated and having stepped back, Guinevere couldn't help but burst out laughing. She wouldn't make a move on a married woman, you know. In her eyes, Ritsuka, entangled with so many girls, was the most wifed-up person she knew. "Ritsuka, you can call me Big Sis if you like. Mash, don't misunderstand, I have no intention of having children with her or you. If you're still worried, why don't you sleep with us tonight too? We can have a girls' sleepover, chat about old times, and mentally prepare for tomorrow's final battle." If Guinevere had suggested being alone with Ritsuka, Mash would have refused. But a group sleepover? Not only was Mash tempted, but Serenity and Nitocris also looked eager to join. Just then, Guinevere mentally asked the owner of the Buddha palm that had annihilated the demon god Pillar about her whereabouts. The answer came: she had just visited the Sun King and planned to extend her stay. She wouldn't be coming tonight. Chapter 182, Chapter 182, Acknowledgement from Excalibur. 1362 words. And that's how Mash and I met, and how we began our journey to restore the human order. After that, we survived the initial inferno of Fuyuki, then the evil dragon war, and later formed a bond with the Rose Emperor in the city of Seven Hills, all leading us to this place. 1-2. In the blink of an eye, this is already the 7th singularity we've experienced. Da Vinci-chan really was incredible. She could craft bathtubs in the middle of the desert and erect cloth partitions for privacy. After finishing her work, she promptly left. Though she possessed a perfect female body, the soul within was male. Now, shielded by the fabric enclosure, and with the wooden tubs raised on stands, Guinevere lit a fire to heat the water. The 5 of them, each occupying a tub, gazed up at the starry sky together. "Ritsuka, I'm eager to hear the full details of your adventures," Guinevere said. "If you continue on this path, you'll surely become heroic spirits yourselves. In fact, when it comes to saving the world, most heroic spirits can't match your accomplishments. My own deeds, for instance, pale in comparison to yours." "You're too kind, Miss Ruler," Ritsuka replied. "Yeah, Auntie Guinevere, you're being way too modest." Mash blurted out. Ritsuka still addressed her as Miss Ruler. As much as she enjoyed flirting, she didn't dare call Guinevere Big Sis. She had a nagging feeling she'd be completely outplayed. Mash, on the other hand, had called her Auntie without a second thought. But if she were speaking as Galahad, Auntie would indeed be the proper term. "I've told you before, call me Auntie again, and I'll take you to bed. Now be a good girl and stick to Ruler, or call me Big Sis." The bathtubs stood side by side, steaming in the cool night air. They could only afford to use their precious water for bathing because the final battle was tomorrow. The refugee camp had lifted all resource restrictions, and Tawaratota had fully unleashed his noble phantasm. With these two factors combined, the refugees were already holding extravagant feasts, too preoccupied, and forbidden, to approach this area. "Fine, Big Sis it is," Mash conceded. "It's just that your idea of taking me to bed doesn't sound like a good thing. It reminds me of some very unpleasant big sisters I met in previous singularities." Mash was right next to Guinevere, her clean form visible in the tub, revealing most of her collarbones and shoulders. Mash, Ritsuka, Guinevere, Serenity, and Nitocris, all girls. Chaldea had temporarily disabled its surveillance, and aside from the first Hassan, no one could breach their perception. Thus, they had nothing to guard against. Except Mash, thank you for the hospitality. Guinevere pressed her palms together, imprinting the scene into her mind. She had no intention of cheating, but she had no intention of holding back either. In fact, Guinevere would be delighted if Artoria got angry over this. After all, this was nothing more than what they had done countless times in their lives, soaking together in large bathhouses. By the way, Ritsuka, Guinevere said, here's what I promised you. What was the catalyst that could reliably summon Guinevere? The answer, of course, was the lock of hair Merlin had used to summon her. She certainly hadn't left that with Merlin. Upon receiving the strand of ash-blonde hair from her original body, Ritsuka froze for a moment. Then, under the watchful gaze of 4 pairs of eyes, she leaped out of the tub, went to her clothes, and carefully stored the hair away. What a magnificent sight, Guinevere purred. That perfectly toned body. You 3 could probably enjoy it for a year. Huh? More than a year. For the rest of my life. Not even death could separate me from her. The "huh" came from Mash. The rest of my life was serenity. And the final declaration belonged to Nitocris, wielder of the mirror of the underworld. Mash is still so naive, Guinevere thought, so inexperienced with human ways. With a faint smile, she leaned back and slid into the water, leaving only her golden hair floating on the surface. Having bathed in Leah's body several times now, Guinevere had grown more familiar with it. For instance, its desires were faint, far more normal than her own body's had ever been. Submerged and holding her breath, Guinevere's thoughts turned to the Lion King. But the more she considered it, the more she realized there was nothing left to dwell on. Tomorrow she and the Chaldea group would prove to the Lion King that the human order of this world could still be saved, that she didn't need to resort to the desperate measure of creating a pure human gene pool. Once the holy sword fully contracted, shrinking from the size of a city into a lance that could be held in one hand, not a single living being currently within its range would survive. There are 3 hours until dawn and 6 hours until Agravain's final deadline, Guinevere thought underwater. Instead of admiring these girls' beautiful forms, I should be talking to Bedivere. I need to see if I can get that holy sword from him. Her decision made, Guinevere burst from the water, materializing Artoria's classic blue armor the instant she landed. With a snap of her fingers, golden flames enveloped her dripping hair, burning away the moisture in seconds. Her EX rank skill, execution, granted her control over fire and immunity to its effects. Mash, Ritsuka, and you too, she announced, I'm going to have a chat with Bedivere. If the water gets cold, you'll have to figure something out yourselves. Also, Mash, there's something. Anyway, tomorrow, if you hear a voice telling you to release the Holy Sword's seal, remember to agree. Guinevere believed that when she wielded the Holy Sword, Tristan, who couldn't bear to face her, would consent. Gawain, freed from his duty as a knight, would consent. Even the knights who had defied the Lion King's wishes and chosen death over obedience would surely consent. This was all assuming, of course, that Bedivere and Mordred would never object. The real problem was Bedivere himself, the one whose wish was to personally return the Holy Sword. Would he be willing to entrust it to her? Ruler, are you saying you want to use the Holy Sword? Inside a tent, Guinevere, fresh from her bath, sat alone with Bedivere, who had just returned after a few drinks. At her request, the alcohol's haze instantly vanished from his mind. He had witnessed the Lion King's cruelty and understood her desire to preserve only human specimens. He was tormented by his failure to return the Holy Sword to the lake. Returning the sword to the king was the only way Merlin had told him to awaken her, but returning it personally was merely his own obsession. If a better candidate existed to return the sword, Bedivere wouldn't mind dying with his guilt. When he awoke from his petrified state, both his body and soul were shattered. He had long since reached the end of his journey, the point where his body and soul would burn to ashes. Ruler, if the sword recognizes you and allows you to wield it, then take it. The Holy Sword chose its master. While the Sword of Promised Victory wasn't as exclusive as the Sword in the Stone, which could only be wielded by the King of Knights, it still couldn't be used by just anyone, let alone have its 13 seals released. With trepidation, Bedivere detached his silver arm, revealing the sword of promised victory hidden within. Then he saw it. The sword resonated with joy at being held by Guinevere, even though she claimed it was only because she inhabited the King of Night's body. Now, Guinevere possessed two holy swords. She could totally pull off a starburst stream. Holding the sword of promised victory in one hand and drawing the sword of destined judgment with the other, Guinevere felt them first regard each other with unfamiliarity, then radiate a joyful desire to be close. Sensing the sword's emotions, Guinevere let out a laugh. Chapter 183, Chapter 183, The Corrected Holy Sword Raised Against the Lion King. 1415 words. The sun and moon revolved and time flew by. In the blink of an eye, the sun rose once more from the horizon. After a brief rest, the group gathered in the center of the camp to assign tasks. Nitocris would command the Sphinxes, tasked with absorbing the first wave of attacks from the enforcement knights already positioned on the city walls. The mountain people's forces, led by the Hassan of the 100 Faces, would clear the regular soldiers stationed around the perimeter of New Camelot City. Da Vinci-chan, Tawaratota, and the Hassan of the Cursed Arm were assigned to breach the three other city gates, leaving the main gate untouched. For the final battle, it was time for Tawaratota and the Hassan of the Cursed Arm, who had been handling logistics and coordination, to finally play a role on the front lines. Ruler, are we really going to charge straight through the main gate? Not we. I will, along with Bedivere. Mash, Ritsuka, and the elite soldiers I've personally trained in swordsmanship. I need you to search the Holy City as quickly as possible and rescue any humans who have already entered. Remember, if they refuse to cooperate, don't waste time arguing. Just knock them out and carry them away. Ruler, I understand. But for you to face the Lion King with just enough. If I didn't want Bedivere to apologize to her personally, I wouldn't even be bringing him. Against the Lion King, I will not lose. Of course, if you've finished your tasks and my battle with the Lion King is still ongoing, I permit you to approach and observe. After all, you are this body's master, and Mash has received Galahad's gift. You both have the right to witness the end. The meeting was brief. Afterward, Nitocris had to return to the Sun King's temple to report. Only after Sanzang guaranteed she would protect the Sun King with her life did Nitocris quickly rush to catch up. By the time Nitocris crossed the desert and arrived outside New Camelot City, with over 100 Sphinxes, a massive crowd had gathered. In addition to the mountain people and numerous servants already assembled, many bandits and merchants who had been wandering the wasteland had also flocked to the city. They understood nothing of a final battle, or how defeating the Lion King would restore the human order. They had only heard that this was a campaign to reclaim the holy city of Jerusalem, and that those who participated could have their names inscribed on the walls of the new holy city to be built afterward. For that alone, death no longer held any fear for these life-starved bandits and merchants. The final arrangements mainly involved assigning them to the 100 Faces mountain folk army. Amid the clamor, Guinevere was the first to stride toward the main gate, letting the sword of promised victory, a weapon she had only recently wielded, settle into her hands. They had no more time to waste. Thus, she would be the one to declare the start of this battle. Excalibur. Is this our first meeting? Or has it been a long time? In any case, thank you for allowing me to wield you. Now, I ask for your aid. Help me restore your true master to her original self. Today, the ever-victorious king once again steps onto the battlefield. Her golden hair billowed, a single stubborn strand standing defiant against the wind. As the King of Knights raised the sword of promised victory high above her head, golden manna light coiled around its blade. Behind Guinevere, the noisy arguments ceased. On the walls of New Camelot City, however, the enforcement knights erupted into a chaotic uproar, until Agravain activated their madness enhancement, stripping them of their free will. If Guinevere allowed it, Agravain would stand by the Lion King's side until the very end, serving her with his utmost loyalty. Unlike the other knights, Agravain had not sought the Lion King's blessing. His actions stemmed entirely from his purest, unadulterated will. This radiance is the hope of the stars, the proof of life that illuminates the earth. The sword of promised victory began to unleash its power. Golden motes of light coiled around the blade, forming a colossal light sword over 40 meters long. As she chanted the release incantation, Guinevere poured her own mana into the sword, adding a faint crimson glow to its light. However, the sword of promised victory was, after all, the sword of the king. The madness contained within her crimson mana was instantly purified upon entering the blade. Excalibur! With a full-throated roar, Guinevere unleashed her mana, silently praying that the sword would shatter the city gates. Otherwise, she would be utterly humiliated. Fortunately, the sword of promised victory responded to her plea with its full might. The immense mana she possessed, amplified by the Holy Grail, was more than enough to sustain the sword's maximum release. A golden torrent surged forward, carrying the power to obliterate everything in its path. The barriers outside New Camelot City, the gates, and even the walls, all constructed from the shell of the Holy Lance, were annihilated by this single strike. The golden wave continued its destructive path, carving deep into the city's interior. When the torrent reached its limit, it erupted skyward like a geyser. The golden light scattered like fireflies, sounding the first thunderous drumbeat of the battle. At that moment, Guinevere disregarded any coordination with the forces behind her. She called out to Bedivere, gave a quick nod to Mash and Ritsuka, and the two of them charged through the destroyed city gate. As Guinevere and Bedivere surged past the gate and raced toward the center of New Camelot, enforcement knights leaped down from the ruined walls on either side. They attempted to cut off the pair's retreat and block Mash, Ritsuka, and the elite mountain folk who followed. Almost simultaneously, Nitocris abandoned any attempt to coordinate the entire army. She dispatched several sphinxes to assist Mash and Ritsuka while directing the rest to attack the other three city gates. This served a dual purpose: to draw the first wave of enemy fire, and to prevent the enforcement knights at the other gates from redeploying to defend the main breach. With Nitocris in motion, the Hossens of the 100 Faces also broke from the main force. Ignoring the additional reinforcements arriving on their own, they proceeded with their planned mission, clearing the several fortresses outside New Camelot to secure the flanks and rear of the main assault force. Thus, this so-called final battle, mired in chaos from the very beginning, instantly erupted into white-hot intensity. Three noble phantasms, belonging to Da Vinci-chan, Tawaratota, and Hossen of the Cursed Arm, were unleashed. Yet, perhaps because the Lion King within the city had already been awakened by the sword of promised victory, none of them managed to shatter the gates in a single strike. However, in the next moment, their planned gate breaching became unnecessary. From the other three gates of New Camelot City, 3 squadrons of enforcement knights on horseback charged out, breaking through the lines of sphinxes and servants. They plunged directly into the nearest mob of disorganized civilians, many of whom were still intent on looting, now left without any command. Agonizing screams filled the air. Untrained by Guinevere and completely leaderless, the civilians were no match for the enforcement knights. Yet they still served a purpose. Even for the 100 enforcement knights charging from each of the 3 gates, slaughtering nearly 10,000 pigs, would take a considerable amount of time. Seizing the opportunity while the knights were outside and the gates remained open, the servants stationed at the other 3 gates, all except Mash's group, still locked in a fierce battle at the main breach, surged into the city. Their mission was to assist in locating and evacuating those who had previously passed the holy selection. But as they entered, followed by Mash, Ritsuka, and the elite mountain folk. At the very center of New Camelot City, the Lion King, who had been waiting on her throne, finally opened her eyes. These newcomers had filled the final quota, prompting her to extend her palm and clench it into a fist. Instantly, the entire singularity began to contract, and New Camelot City started reverting to its true form. To those outside, it appeared as if a towering pillar of light erupted from the city's circular walls, encasing it completely. Chapter 184, Chapter 184, Duel Me, Artoria of this world. 1269 words. Ruler, we. Bedivere, we just need to keep moving forward. Leave everything else to the others. The pillar of light soared into the sky as New Camelot City contracted. Outside, the battle raged on. But everyone understood, unless they shattered this shell encircling the city, not only would those outside be unable to enter, but Mash and the others would be trapped inside even after rescuing the Holy Selection survivors. Guinevere, just trust me. Trust everyone. Worry was etched across his face, and his pace slowed involuntarily. But after his gaze fell upon the twin swords in Guinevere's hands, he nodded and resumed following closely behind her. Along the way, enforcement knights stepped aside and regular soldiers dodged out of their path. Leveraging their familiarity with Camelot City, the two of them took the fastest route to the royal palace in the inner city. Stepping inside marked the official start of their final journey to the Lion King's throne. No handmaidens, no knights, the path was filled with nothing but dead silence. It was as if the Lion King was meant to be utterly alone, which she would have been if Guinevere hadn't allowed Agravain to return and fulfill his loyalty. When they reached the throne room at the highest point, the Lion King had already been waiting for them for some time. Agravain had just issued his final command as the city's commander. He ordered all enforcement knights to fight to the death, but permitted the locally recruited regular soldiers to surrender. Queen, Sir Agravain, we are in a hurry, but not so much that we don't have time for one last conversation. Right, King of Knights of another possibility. King of Knights? I am no longer worthy of that title. Everyone calls me the Lion King. Or you may call me the wielder of the Holy Lance, the goddess of the storm Rhongomyniad. The Lion King's voice was cold and devoid of humanity, even more inhuman than the King of Knights had been before meeting Guinevere. Even so, she did not weigh anchor immediately. She still wanted to hear what her queen had to say. Guinevere. That was the name she remembered. In her fragmented memories, she felt a profound sense of apology toward that name, an apology that mirrored the King of Knights who, even before accepting Guinevere, had always been drawn to women. However, Guinevere was not the first to speak. She already knew that words alone could never persuade the Lion King. She kicked Guinevere's iron greaves, signaling him to step forward. Guinevere then watched as he knelt on one knee, his head bowed low, and began to recount his story to the Lion King, confessing his sins. But Guinevere. Who is that? Time rewound. Back before Merlin had freed Guinevere from his petrified state, before they had even departed from Avalon, Guinevere had already learned the truth. Merlin had told him, the king no longer remembers your name, nor anything related to you. Even so, will you still return the holy sword, burning your last vestiges of soul and body to do so? At that time, Guinevere's only reply had been, yes. Returning to the present, Agravain let out a sigh upon hearing the Lion King's response. He felt it was a cruel injustice to Guinevere. When Guinevere and Guinevere had first appeared, the knights had announced both their names before the Lion King. The Lion King remembered Guinevere but had asked who Guinevere was. Taking a step forward, Agravain intended to crush Guinevere's hopes once and for all. He wanted to tell him that, just as the Lion King had introduced herself, she was no longer the King of Knights, only a remnant, a corrupted version transformed into the goddess Rhongomyniad, wielder of the Holy Lance. But Guinevere stepped forward, silencing Agravain with a look. She planted her sword in the ground before Guinevere and spoke. Sir Guinevere's story is true. He was indeed one of the top 12 Round Table Knights, the last knight entrusted with the Holy Sword after Camlin Hill. Another possibility, Lia, is that you yourself have forgotten your memories and failed this night. This is your personal failing. Also, I've already unleashed the Holy Sword and caused such a massive disturbance. Are you all still unable to see the Excalibur in my hand? She held two swords, nearly identical except for the fairy script engraved on one. Without careful inspection, it would be easy to mistake them. But the people present were the Holy Sword's original owner and Agravain. Do you see it clearly now? Guinevere demanded. This is your sword. The body I'm using is also your uncorrupted form. If you understand that, then you will remember. I don't care what your ideals are now, you must remember Guinevere, and accept his apology. The Lion King's divine presence felt alien, sharing only a 30% resemblance to the Guinevere knew. This version wore a laurel crown, and her towering armor completely covered her chest, unlike the adult Artoria Guinevere was most familiar with. Guinevere raised the sword higher, forcing the Lion King to look more closely. A sharp pain shot through the Lion King's head, causing her to squeeze one eye shut and press a hand to her temple. Just as Guinevere remembered from the game's plot, seeing Excalibur clearly finally triggered the Lion King's memory of Guinevere's name. She recalled that he, too, had been one of her knights. However, she still couldn't remember his story, and she had no intention of stopping her plans. If you are my knight, and if you have apologized for your wrongs, then return to my side. Await the final ritual's arrival alongside Sir Agravain. Agravain had said the Lion King's ideal was pure and untainted, a necessary choice made to preserve a fragment of humanity. Guinevere, however, knew that the only way to stop the Lion King was to prove that Chaldea possessed the power to restore the human order and defeat the demon god king. The simplest way to do that was to defeat her in direct combat first. And at that very moment, the Sun King's attack, the one Guinevere had been waiting for, descended. Ramesseum Tentirus, this was the name of one of the Sun King's noble phantasms. He had declared that the past, present, and future all existed for him, and thus all temples belonged to him. His achievements in constructing numerous pyramids also manifested as his noble phantasms. With this EX-rank noble phantasm, classified as anti-personnel, anti-fortress, anti-barrier, anti-enforcement, and anti-noble phantasm, he could gather a colossal sphere of electricity imbued with the divine might of ancient gods, or he could rain down all his pyramids from the sky, crashing them into his target's grave. He first attacked with the great sphere of electricity. The first shot shattered New Camelot's mana barrier, and the second dealt a severe blow to the shell forming around the Holy Lance. But just as the Lion King's gaze shifted, intending to inflict divine punishment on the Sun King from afar, Guinevere finally pointed the sword of promised victory at her. Guinevere, you and Agravain will bear witness. You have made your apology, this battle is no longer yours to fight. Now, it is my turn to strike you down, Lion King, you who have strayed from the path, and must be corrected. I, Guinevere, Chief of the Round Table Knights and Queen of the King of Knights, hereby declare war on the Lion King. Duel me, Artoria Pendragon of another possibility. Even now, Guinevere did not call her the storm goddess Rhongomyniad. Her goal remained correction. Chapter 185, Chapter 185, Holy Sword and Holy Lance, Queen and King. 1551 words. The sword and lance clashed after the Sun King's tombstone-like pyramids shattered the Holy Lance's outer shell. As the battle began, the scene behind the Lion King transformed. The magnificent throne vanished, as did the massive window that had once overlooked the entire city. The surface of the world peeled away, and spiritrons surged like a raging tide. Only the ground where she and Guinevere stood remained, a divine path of white jade. The Lion King. She had been guarding the end of the world from the very beginning, waiting only for the gate to open. Guinevere declaring war on me, is that truly your final word? Your soul knows good yet still commits evil. Your alignment is good, yet you permit wickedness, which is no different from being evil itself. Then let me declare this to you. In the ideal city I am about to create, there will be no place for a soul like yours. Die, Guinevere. At the end of your journey, you will witness the ripples at the end of the world, the true face of the planet beneath its surface. Can a god feel anger? After Guinevere saw through every one of her techniques in close combat, and forced her back step by step, the Lion King was clearly enraged. After unleashing her mana burst and temporarily repelling Guinevere with the raging tide of the world's inner layer, the Lion King's divine aura intensified. Her mana level surged visibly, rising without pause. At the same time, a storm gathered around the Holy Lance in her hand, beginning to dissolve the surface world, the crumbling New Camelot city. The city was a manifestation of the lance. Its disappearance meant she could now unleash the lance's full power, but it also signified her abandonment of the hundreds of citizens who had survived the arduous holy selection. It meant, "It seems that after seeing the holy sword, you didn't just remember Guinevere's name. Your words may be harsh, but you've already given up on your idea of creating a human museum, haven't you? Miss Artoria, who does not belong to me, you've finally seen your own defeat, haven't you?" As she made her declaration, Guinevere, holding the holy sword, and its replica in her left and right hands respectively, immediately activated her second noble phantasm. 3 pairs of wings materialized behind her. Then, wreathed in fiery light, she charged toward the Lion King at a speed that shattered the sound barrier. She now understood. If the Lion King's intentions were truly as she claimed, then what the Lion King truly sought was to witness the power Guinevere had described, a power capable of correcting her and supporting them in their mission to restore the human order. Dun Stallion. Guinevere recognized the pure white steed that had long accompanied the king of knights in battle. It was this horse that had intercepted Guinevere's supersonic charge, now standing silently beside the Lion King. In a fluid motion, the Lion King vaulted onto its back, her aura merging seamlessly with the steed's. This was the true stance of the Lion King when wielding her lance, a mounted warrior. Fighting on foot with a cavalry lance had been one of the reasons she had been steadily pushed back during her recent deathmatch with Guinevere. In the sky, the warhorse galloped at a speed rivaling Guinevere's. It carried the Lion King in a relentless series of charges and thrusts, forcing Guinevere to feel the immense pressure an infantry soldier faces against cavalry. But Guinevere possessed the Holy Grail, granting her a virtually infinite supply of mana. Furthermore, the rainbow gem she held could be used as a noble phantasm, not just a mere communication device. When used as a noble phantasm, its original functions were bestowed upon Guinevere, a full 7 types of magecraft enhancements to her body. Her body grew lighter, her strength surged, her vision sharpened, and her sensory range expanded. Even her physical coordination improved, allowing her to adapt more quickly to the 3 pairs of wings she was using for only the second time. Before the rainbow gem's enhancement, the deified Guinevere could still be outmaneuvered by the agile combination of Dun Stallion and the Lion King. But after the enhancement, she could now discern the patterns of their aerial maneuvers. Time and again, she met them head-on, forcing brutal clashes of blades. The searing pain in her hands. The rapid healing granted by the Holy Grail. At the world's end, high above the planet's reverse side, 2 meteors traced brilliant arcs across the sky, their collisions echoing with thunderous roars. Gradually, they forgot everything else, relentlessly pushing their own potential to its limits and pouring every newly unlocked ounce of power into the escalating, terrifying battle. Meanwhile, on the world's surface, Agravain and Guinevere remained locked in a standoff within the throne room. According to the Lion King and Guinevere, their battle was no longer necessary, they needed only to await the outcome of the duel. But Agravain thought differently. Having learned the truth behind the king's transformation, he understood the centuries of pain, regret, and loyalty Guinevere had endured. Whether to forgive him was the Lion King's decision, but whether to punish him was a matter he, as the chief officer of the Round Table, had to consider. Guinevere, Agravain began, I imagine you're also hoping for the king's punishment, aren't you? The king is gentle. Even in this state, she granted Mordred a reunion with her queen mother under the guise of exile. But you know as well as I do that playing the villain has always been my role. I know, Guinevere replied. Without Sir Agravain, the Round Table would have collapsed long ago. Speaking of which, there's one more thing I wish to know. When the queen defeated you in the citadel, did she truly let you go without saying a word? Agravain gripped his spear, his face contorted with murderous intent. Yet, seeing this, Guinevere smiled and let out a long, relieved sigh. He would not resist Agravain's judgment. The holy sword had been returned, and the Lion King had Guinevere to guide her back. All he wanted now was to witness the final outcome of their battle. But his smile, his question, they made Agravain pause. Rubbing the bridge of his nose, Agravain spoke first. Guinevere knew my ideal was the prosperity of Camelot, and the continuation of its kingdom. She asked me whether I wanted to preserve an empty city of the undead, or a city of happiness, where the people lived in peace, and every member of the Round Table could smile freely. She shared some of her memories with me, proving that Mordred's story was true. She showed me what the Camelot I truly wished to preserve should look like. She demanded that I consider the nation now called Great Britain, which still carries Camelot's civilization, as the continuation of our kingdom. She said that the kingdom we once fought for, though it fell, has endured to this day. She also said that if I refused to accept this, it would only prove how narrow-minded I am. At this, Agravain let out a wry laugh. He knew it was sophistry, a forced argument, and whether he accepted it was ultimately his own choice. But he himself knew that no kingdom in this world could last forever. Pursuing the continuation of a civilization was far more achievable than preserving a nation. Sir Bedivere, Agravain's tone shifted, enough of that. Do you accept the charge of betraying the king's command? Do you accept the sentence of 30 military floggings from the chief officer of the Round Table Knights? Sir Agravain, only 30 floggings. Are you suggesting you've committed other crimes besides disobeying orders? You were the cause, but you cannot bear all the blame for what the king has become. Sir Bedivere, do not argue. This is my judgment as chief officer of the Round Table. But your body, no longer sustained by the holy sword, is like a candle flickering in the wind. Can you truly endure these 30 lashes? Agravain inverted his spear, its shaft now serving as the flogging rod. Beneath the vanished New Camelot city, amidst the restored ruins of the holy city of Jerusalem, Bedivere turned his back and began to remove his armor. Meanwhile, with New Camelot city's abrupt disappearance, Mash and the others easily found many survivors of the holy selection. The battle on the world's surface was now reduced to mopping up the remaining hundreds of enforcement knights. However, the servants showed little enthusiasm, allowing the knights to slaughter the bandits who had gathered on their own accord. Soon after, on the reverse side of the world, after repeated clashes, Guinevere found herself slowly being overpowered by the Lion King, whose power had transcended the limits of a servant's body. The Lion King stared at her with a look that screamed, "Is that all you've got?" The outer shell of the Holy Lance had been shattered by the Sun King, hundreds of the chosen of the Holy Selection had been abandoned, and the Holy Lance itself was resonating with every clash against the Holy Sword. The Lion King seemed to be regaining a sliver of humanity, recalling more of her memories. Chapter 186, Chapter 186, The Holy Sword Calls, the Round Table Convenes. 1411 words. Artoria. Your charges are growing weak. Are you hungry? Don't tell me you haven't had a single proper meal since you built New Camelot City. The Holy Grail's mana supply seemed endless, and Guinevere's control over her deified power grew more refined. Yet, in terms of raw stats, she was still outmatched by the Lion King. She could only rely on her swordsmanship and her deep understanding of the Lion King's spear techniques to fight her to a near stalemate, always just half a step behind. But as time wore on and the Lion King recalled more of her past, her emerald eyes filled with increasing humanity. Her charges became sloppier, riddled with openings that gave Guinevere enough time to taunt her. The Lion King paused, a sense of resignation washing over her. She sighed inwardly. This truly isn't my Guinevere. Her Guinevere was gentle and virtuous, not wild and vivacious like the woman before her, and certainly not one to wield her holy sword in rebellion against her. Indeed, the Lion King replied, her voice steady. I have eaten nothing since arriving here, but that is of no consequence. I remember now that forest, that hill, and the knight who cared for me until the very end, his eyes swollen from weeping. Guinevere, if you can truly defeat me with my final strike, then go and tell him for me. You did beautifully. The holy sword has been returned. My last and most loyal knight, you may hold your head high. A storm gathered around the holy lance. Dun Stallion snorted impatiently, as if it too understood that if the battle remained a clash of blades, it would rage until the end of time. With both combatants possessing infinite mana, victory would only come when one of them broke through their current limits and achieved a new level of martial prowess. But by abandoning the chosen of the holy selection and ceasing to sustain this singularity, the Lion King had bought herself very little time. In truth, the singularity was now sustained by the Holy Grail within Guinevere. The Lion King knew that the moment Guinevere realized this, the singularity's restoration would be complete. At this moment, the Lion King's emerald eyes had regained their clarity. Just as Merlin had foretold, the return of the Holy Sword had allowed her to remember everything. True to her original nature, she immediately recognized her error, and suppressing her emotions, prepared to self-destruct. Guinevere, she declared, withstand the full power of the Holy Lance and prove the truth of your claims. Previously, the Lion King had borne the weight of humanity's continued existence, single-handedly sustaining the entire singularity, yet she had still overwhelmed Guinevere's full-powered assault. Now, with her obsession gone and her power withdrawn, she sought only to see if Guinevere could live up to her defiant words. The storm intensified, the roar of the world's end tide growing more frequent. Raising the Holy Lance high, the Lion King spurred her steed into the sky. In the final moments of battle, the simplest and most practical method of resolution remained a direct clash of noble phantasms. As the storm goddess, the Lion King still held complete mastery over the Holy Lance. To unleash its full power, she had no need to release its 13 restraints. Conversely, if Guinevere failed to release all 13 restraints, the holy sword in her hands would be no match for the Lion King. Sorry, old friend, she murmured apologetically, temporarily sheathing the sword of destined judgment. Releasing the sword of promised victory requires both hands. Once more, Guinevere raised the sword of promised victory high above her head. She was attempting to undo the holy sword's 13 restraints. Seeing her intent, the Lion King slowed the Holy Lance's charge, waiting for her. Guinevere's consciousness drifted to Camelot City, to the throne room, to the round table she knew so well, and to the 13 figures seated there, all but herself. As she had hoped, the Knights of the Round Table, who had never truly accepted the Lion King, consented to release the restraints corresponding to their ideals. They judged that this act aligned with the precepts of the restraints themselves. Moreover, seated at the head of the table, appearing before them alongside Guinevere, was another possibility, the original Artoria Pendragon, the one who had lived out her life as a human. Upon arriving in this singularity, Avalon's rejection forced Artoria to use Guinevere's body as a vessel. However, this did not mean her summoned soul had vanished. Their fusion had actually discarded Guinevere's physical form, her soul had remained within, observing everything. She had witnessed Guinevere's struggles, and all the blushworthy things Guinevere had done using her body. She had also resolved that once this journey ended, she would share all these memories with her other self, the one who already possessed a physical body in another timeline. Her presence here was, of course, because the Holy Sword had specifically summoned her soul along with Guinevere's. Similarly, after Bedivere was flogged, the last remnants of his soul were also forcibly drawn into this space. But that wasn't all that happened to Bedivere. Because this was a gathering of heroic spirits, he caught the attention of the counterforce. The counterforce immediately marked his soul, which was already flickering like a candle in the wind. He wanted to burn away both his soul and body, to disappear completely. But if he sought release, how could he possibly do so without first asking the counterforce for permission? Bedivere, this is the message the Lion King asked me to deliver to you. As expected, the king remains as gentle as ever to forgive Sir Bedivere for such a grave sin so readily. After the flogging, Agravain felt the holy sword's summons, and saw Mash smashing down with her shield. He simply chose to end his own life. He had already foreseen the Lion King's defeat. Lancers committing suicide, it's only natural, isn't it? Besides, since Guinevere could wield the holy sword and demand the release of its 13 restraints, the blade meant to destroy planetary threats would never lose to the Holy Lance, which, in truth, was not a single weapon but a series of anchors pinning the planet's inner and outer layers. I acknowledge this as a battle for truth. Following the knights who had already opposed the Lion King, Agravain was the first to make this declaration. After him, this world's Mordred rose from Leah's embrace, her expression a mix of melancholy and envy. Is the Lion King evil? She asked. Her ideal is pure and untainted, but ignorance itself is a form of evil. All right then, I acknowledge it. This is a battle against an evil person. Father, let me cling to you a little longer. I am so jealous of my other self. With time running short, Leah took the initiative to embrace her. This world's Mordred, for once not acting aloof, accepted the hug. Following Agravain and Mordred, Lancelot, Gawain, and Tristan gave their acknowledgments. Theirs came more easily. Only Lancelot asked for something to be passed on, a message for Ritsuka Fujimaru. He wished to be summoned to the real Chaldea. The 12th restraint fell to Guinevere, who had just been inscribed upon the throne of heroes. His condition was, I acknowledge this as a battle against one stronger than myself. Having just been narrowly outmatched by the Lion King, he now found a way to even the score. Finally, the 13th restraint was left for Artoria herself to declare. Artoria of another possibility, I hereby pronounce your sentence. You are one who has abandoned the world's continuation. You are an enemy to the restoration of the human order. You are an enemy of the planet. This declaration served as both the release of the Holy Sword's 13th restraint and the result of Guinevere invoking her judgment. She knew the Lion King had also been waiting for her errors to be pointed out, so she could finally receive her execution. In reality, after a few seconds of silence, the holy sword in Guinevere's hand erupted with light countless times more intense than ever before. Following her declaration to the Lion King, the radiance of the holy lance and the holy sword clashed. At the world's end, violent waves surged, refusing to calm for a long, long time. Ultimately, it was the holy sword's light that engulfed the smiling Lion King. Chapter 187, Chapter 187, King of Knights, let's exchange memories, my other self. 1,318 words. At the world's end the tides churned. When the battered Lion King opened her eyes again, she found herself resting her head on Guinevere's lap. Guinevere sat amidst the soul pure white divine path in this place. Everything had returned to her, the memories of Artoria Pendragon, the King of Knights. She also clearly remembered the centuries of aimless wandering and the cold indifference she had adopted after arriving in this singularity. You were right. I am an enemy of the planet. But the power you displayed. A sharp flick to the Lion King's forehead cut her off, stunning her. She had never experienced such a thing before. As she reached up to rub the spot, Guinevere leaned down, and unable to resist, planted a kiss right where she had flicked her. Then, Guinevere finally snapped out of it, staring blankly at the equally stunned Lion King. She held the gaze until, embarrassed, she turned her head away, admitting to herself that she was in increasingly desperate need of some Artoria elements. Ahem. All right. I know the power I just used wasn't enough to defeat the demon god king, she said, clearing her throat. But even if you don't believe in me or Chaldea, can't you at least trust Merlin? He's been watching Chaldea's human order restoration journey this whole time. My first master, that was Merlin, still in Avalon. And he's worried about you. The Lion King's memories differed from Guinevere's King of Knights persona. She naturally trusted Merlin more, whom she regarded as a godfather. Moreover, no one believed in Merlin's prophecies more than she did. Merlin knows. The Lion King trailed off, then froze. She finally noticed that Guinevere had said Demon God King, whereas Chaldea currently only knew of the King of Magecraft. The difference of a single word meant that Guinevere and Merlin knew something she had only seen with her divine sight. Heh! The Lion King laughed, a self-deprecating chuckle that also carried a sigh of emotion for Merlin. He's actually willing to get involved in the prophecy himself. I don't care what he thinks, but the fact is, he's already done it. The mention of the Demon God King had freed the Lion King from her lingering anxieties, completely extinguishing her will to fight. She raised her head, gazing directly at the still youthful face of her other self. As she looked, she reached out and cupped the face in her hands, tracing every inch of it with her fingertips. In that moment, it was as if she could see Guinevere's true form, as if her younger self were speaking to her. Leah says she wants your memories, Guinevere relayed. She wants to use them as a warning to herself and to draw more power from you. Though they shared a single body, two souls resided within. Artoria hadn't spoken before because she lacked the ability, but after the recent roundtable meeting, her voice could now reach Guinevere's mind through the holy sword. Guinevere could guess most of what her Leah was thinking. She likely didn't want to miss the rest of the human order restoration journey, and lacked confidence in her current strength. Leah says that if you're worried the human order restoration journey won't reach its end, you shouldn't stay here and perish with this singularity. Instead, you should merge with her and witness the journey's conclusion together. The Lion King was an alternate possibility of Artoria. She had survived through the power of the Holy Lance, eventually ascending to godhood. But this also meant she was special, an individual not recorded on the throne of heroes. If this place collapsed, it would mean her complete annihilation. Any future Lancer class Artoria summoned into the world would have no connection to the Lion King here. My memories, the Lion King murmured. But if I give them to you just like that, you'll have to endure the torment I've suffered, and bear the weight of the sins I've committed in this singularity. But it also means I can share my happiness with you. Humph. Are you saying you plan to share your Guinevere with me? Perhaps because they were two different possibilities of the same person, they could converse freely once the holy sword was placed in the Lion King's arms. The Lion King's words left Leah stunned. She had already been bothered by Guinevere kissing the Lion King's forehead. The idea of sharing was even more unsettling. Leah, you only want her memories, not her soul, Guinevere explained gently. It's just like watching a movie starring yourself. You'll still be you. Compared to Artoria, Guinevere had spent far more time contemplating the complex philosophical question of am I me? Other Leah, the Lion King interjected impatiently, why all this talk? Just tell me, will you take my memories and leave behind proof that I once existed in this world? Death was the Lion King's destiny, delayed by centuries. Eternal rest was the wish she had craved for just as long. After her first ever childish tease, she spoke. Then let us exchange. In my final moments, let me experience the happiness of my other self and witness the prosperous Camelot she has maintained. The Lion King embraced the sword. Guinevere needed to do nothing more, their memories naturally began to swap. During the process, however, the Lion King gradually curled up like a cooked shrimp, her expression toward Guinevere growing increasingly strange. What they shared wasn't merely memories, but the full sensory experience of every event. As a result, though the Lion King had never even had her first kiss, she was now, in a certain sense, a seasoned veteran. Amazing, a Camelot kingdom that rules the entire European continent. Resting on the lap pillow, the Lion King turned her head, trying to move her shattered body. She failed, forced to continue experiencing the memories while curled like a cooked shrimp. Through this exchange, Leah gained the insights into power she desired. The greatest change in the Lion King, however, was the growth of her humanity. She now possessed the demeanor befitting a young woman. All right, the memory exchange is over. Now get lost. One last warning. The Holy Grail of the next singularity was personally delivered by the demon god king. That place holds power far, far more terrifying than mine. I know, Miss Artoria, the one who isn't mine. The Lion King's words caught in her throat. She shot Guinevere a fierce glare, her expression already mirroring Leah's. Compared to the prepared Leah, the Lion King had clearly been far more stimulated by the memory exchange. Now scram. Let me rest quietly here at the end of the world and await my final slumber. The holy sword remained in the Lion King's arms as Leah, still processing the memories, returned to Guinevere's body. Just as she had said, her Leah was only slightly affected, like watching a movie. Guinevere, let's go. Let my other self have her peace. She's been quite shaken. At the end of the world, though the Lion King couldn't move, she still expelled Guinevere from the area. Cradling the sword, she reached for the scattered holy lance, only to suddenly realize. With the holy sword and holy lance in hand, and here at the end of the world rather than in a singularity, she realized she wouldn't die from her wounds after all. The collapse of the Jerusalem singularity wouldn't affect this place. So is there anyone here to help me return the holy sword? She muttered to herself, but only the sound of the tide echoed back. As she savored more of Leah's memories, she gradually regained some strength and curled into a ball, feeling a slight pang of jealousy toward her other self. Honestly, is it really that fun for girls to be so close? The Lion King lay sprawled out, her blush fading, completely devoid of her usual regal composure. Chapter 188, Chapter 188, For the final moments, let's fight King Hassan. 1312 words. On the surface of the world, within the singularity. With the Lion King having withdrawn the Holy Lands, the once majestic Camelot city had vanished completely, leaving only the ruins of Jerusalem it had once covered. Since the Holy Grail was in Guinevere's possession, the singularity could be maintained until she chose to return it. From this perspective, Ritsuka had shown immense trust in Guinevere by entrusting the Holy Grail to her. Beating her wings against the setting sun, Guinevere slowly descended from the sky. She was still grumbling about the Lion King's expulsion and lamenting that, after returning the Holy Sword, she would temporarily lose her connection with Leah. Still, knowing Leah was within her mood remained quite good. Senpai, ruler looks so beautiful when she smiles, especially with those 3 pairs of chicken wings on her back. Below Guinevere, numerous servants and the mountain people had gathered, awaiting the outcome of the battle between gods. As for the remaining enforcement knights, they had been sealed within the tower at the end of the world along with the Lion King. Cut off from their mana supply, they had already collectively returned to the throne of heroes, vanishing even before Guinevere appeared. Mash, watch what you say. Everyone, mash doesn't mean any disrespect. She's just hallucinating from hunger. To most of the mountain people, who were unaware that the 6-winged girl in the sky and the Lion King shared the same origin, she was simply the angel who had defeated their tyrannical ruler, the angel who had saved them. Jerusalem, angels, and the teachings of the Lord spreading through this land. Guinevere's current appearance could be said to have won a massive number of believers for him, repaying the favor of borrowing his power. Amidst the clamor of the mountain people, Guinevere landed. She immediately realized what they saw her as and understood that if she didn't handle the situation, Mash, who was also a savior, would be treated with hostility. Silence, all of you. Go and take as much food as you can carry, and return home. The Lion King has sealed herself away to reflect. From now on, you will rule this land yourselves. To the mountain people, Guinevere's words were the promise of an angel. They performed their most solemn rituals of respect, prostrating themselves before departing. However, just as they were about to kneel, Guinevere, still unaccustomed to being worshipped by so many, grabbed Mash and Ritsuka, and fled the scene at supersonic speed. Flying swiftly, she soon arrived outside the Sun King's tomb, the ancient, magnificent pyramid. Unlike in the game, Guinevere had confronted the Lion King shortly after the shell of the Holy Lance was raised. This meant the Lion King couldn't spare the energy to unleash divine punishment on the Sun King while he was attacking the shell. This left the Sun King alive, though he had grown somewhat transparent from excessive mana consumption. Sun King, Ozymandias. Later, I will hold a banquet in the East Village. You and Sanzang are to come. After the banquet, I will return the Holy Grail so this singularity can be repaired. No response came from the towering golden pyramid, but Guinevere knew he had heard her. She continued. As for Nitocris, she won't be returning here for now. I'll take her directly to the East Village. And thank you for your earlier assistance. The King of Knights, Artoria Pendragon, and the Queen of the King of Knights, Guinevere Pendragon, hereby formally express our gratitude to you, Sun King Ozymandias. Because Guinevere held the Holy Grail, the Chaldea team didn't have to vanish immediately after reclaiming it, which would have prevented them from properly bidding farewell to everyone in this singularity. The reason Guinevere planned to return the Grail only after the banquet was, of course, that she also wanted to say her goodbyes properly, and hopefully meet the first Hassan one last time. Merely observing wasn't enough, she couldn't fully comprehend the first Hassan's swordsmanship. She wanted to experience it firsthand. This was the end, after all. It wouldn't matter if she died. Dying by the first Hassan's blade, Guinevere certainly didn't think there was any shame in that. After Mash and Ritsuka followed her in expressing their thanks, the Sun King finally formed a face from sand and nodded. Guinevere then spread her wings once more and rejoined the procession of servants and mountain people already heading toward the East Village. Perhaps due to Serenity's invitation, and their shared experience of bathing together, Nitocris had surprisingly agreed to come along instead of secretly returning to the desert alone. When Guinevere landed with Mash and Ritsuka and told them about the banquet, not only did Tota roar with laughter and hoist his rice sack high, but all the mountain people erupted in cheers. The servants, meanwhile, scattered in all directions, beginning their first, and last, hunting competition in this singularity. Soon, night fell. Bonfires blazed throughout the East Village and men, women, and children bustled with excitement. Guinevere stood once again on the threshing ground, continuing to instruct the mountain people in swordsmanship. Her swordsmanship remained as precise and deadly as ever, always targeting fatal weak points. The techniques she taught were exactly what the surviving mountain people, those who had already put their training to the test and lived to tell the tale, craved above all else. "Instructor, are you really leaving? I've told you before, there's no need to be so sad. Once we vanish from this land, no memory of our existence will remain, neither in your minds nor in the history of humanity. By tomorrow, it's uncertain whether you'll even remember the sword techniques you're practicing so hard right now." Such was the journey to restore the human order, fix the singularity, return history to its proper course, and in that proper history, no trace of the restorers would remain. The thought brought a pang of melancholy to Guinevere, yet she taught the mountain people even more sword forms, and they practiced with even greater determination. They believed their minds would remember nothing, but they hoped their bodies would retain the memory. This memory persisted late into the night, until they had no strength left, and until the banquet everyone had been preparing finally began. Tawaratota provided an endless supply of rice, the Sun King brought wine and fruit, and Guinevere, using the flames of her skill execution, demonstrated her barbecue techniques for a full 2 hours, cooking all the game the servants had hunted that afternoon. Her culinary skills, once praised by the Round Table Knights in her lifetime, and by Irisveil von Einsburn in the previous Holy Grail War, now earned the admiration of the mountain people and servants gathered here. Was it the aroma of wine? The scent of rice? Or the fragrance of grilled meat? Whatever the reason, Guinevere and the others spotted the Hassan of intoxicated smoke, thought to have been beheaded by the first Hassan, and the first Hassan himself, cloaked in black and resembling an ordinary old farmer. He ate meat, drank wine, and sampled the fruit. After tearing his gaze away from the Sun King's booming, ha 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 ha, laughter, his eyes settled entirely on Guinevere, who had approached him. "When you traveled back to Camelot with Tristan, you glared at me. You showed none of this respect then. That was only because..." "Humph, don't bother making excuses if you didn't recognize me back then. Guinevere of proper human history, the one who deceived the human order's script and ensured the King of Knights survived Camlin Hill. I am equally curious about you. In the time we have left, let's fight." Having just been interrupted, Guinevere cut him off in turn. She beckoned only Mash and Ritsuka, and the four of them, Guinevere, Mash, Ritsuka, and the Hassan of intoxicated smoke, made their way to the deserted temple where the first Hassan lived in seclusion. Chapter 189, Chapter 189, Death and Sword, A Smile Beneath the Morning Sun. 1377 words. What did it feel like to face the first Hassan? It was like confronting death itself, a constant barrage of death visions flashing through one's mind. Outside the temple, the tall, old farmer simply stood leaning on his sword, his cloak thrown back. The mere sight of him disrupted Guinevere's breathing, forcing her to close her eyes for a second to regain control. "Your Grace, will you not ring the bell? Thy fate is not to be sealed at this time. Will you not don your armor? What thou seekest is naught but my swordsmanship. TCH. So you're actually willing to teach me? Art thou not equally intrigued by the mountain people? The first Hassan remained leaning on his sword. After a deep breath, Guinevere gripped the replica holy sword with both hands. Though disappointed to learn it was only a spar, she adjusted her mindset further, focusing her entire consciousness on the match. She knew she was strong. But precisely because of her strength, finding a master like the first Hassan, someone who could reveal the path to breaking through her limits in swordsmanship, was an incredibly rare, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It was even more extraordinary that he was willing to spar and offer guidance. The standoff continued, tense and silent, until the first Hassan let out a soft chuckle and began to walk. He moved like an ordinary old farmer, yet he also seemed to merge with the heavens and earth. Watching him, Guinevere understood the true meaning of the unity of heaven and man. She knew that if she let him slowly approach her, just as Gawain had, she too would be unable to block his strike. While that strike was what she sought, she wanted to witness more of his skill before being cut down by it. Her thoughts surged. She recalled her earliest days of rigid, by-the-book sword practice, her progression to mastering the art and effortlessly finding openings in her opponent's defenses, and the period after her marriage to the King of Knights, when she constantly honed her skills by sparring with the knights in the training grounds. Her swordsmanship had evolved from simply finding openings to actively guiding her opponents into creating them. As these memories flooded back, Guinevere's confidence in her own swordplay returned. Even if it was a self-deception, she forced herself to believe she could win. For without that confidence, she wouldn't dare to draw her sword at all. Meanwhile, the first Hassan sensed the shift in Guinevere's presence. A faint smile touched his lips, but his steps never faltered, and his own aura remained perfectly undisturbed. He was curious to see how Guinevere would disrupt his advance. Think. She recalled the first Hassan's strike that had killed Gawain, a single blow that seemed to embody a lifetime of accumulated knowledge. Drawing on this sudden insight and rapid learning, Guinevere raised the replica holy sword above her head, stepped forward, and assumed the stance for a simple forward slash, the very first technique she had practiced endlessly in her youth. In that moment, Guinevere calmed her mind, infusing only a minimal amount of mana into the blade. She met the first Hassan's gaze, her newfound confidence relentlessly shattering the illusion of death that loomed over her. I will win. I will not die here. As she spoke these words, a smile spread across her own lips. She waited for the first Hassan to step into her optimal striking range, then brought down the most standard of swords in a perfectly ordinary slash. In truth, the moment Guinevere found the confidence to believe she could win, she had already gained the ability to withstand his strike. Moreover, the first Hassan's sword had always fallen only upon those who deserved death. Thus, faced with Guinevere's descending holy sword, he did not raise his own blade to block. Instead, he activated presence concealment, causing her sword to lose its target. He continued to move in the state of unity of heaven and man, arriving at her side unimpeded. Though he excelled at frontal infiltration, his class was still assassin. Do not despair. Thou hast found thy path forward. Thou art also the first to dare raise thy sword against me. Had I met thy blade, our battle would have been a long and arduous one. I trust thou wilt not allow me to infiltrate from the front again. In combat, the first Hassan maintained the imposing dignity of a powerful assassin, his speech patterns differing from when he played the role of an old farmer. But regardless of which persona he adopted, he was still himself. After offering Guinevere his praise and acknowledgement, his figure vanished. When he reappeared, he had already retrieved his cloak, and was walking like an ordinary old farmer toward the still bustling East Village. This Azrael, who walked hand in hand with death, seemed to desire nothing more than the vibrant life before him. He was gone. Guinevere's sword had struck empty air. In the end, she had failed to create an opening. But as she retracted her sword and collapsed onto her back, Guinevere covered her face with one hand and burst into joyous laughter. She had indeed seen the path forward for her swordsmanship, the principle she already knew, returned to simplicity. First Hassan, thank you, she said. Without your pressure and your swordsmanship, I don't know how long it would have taken me to remember this. Just by finding this path, Guinevere's swordsmanship had taken a great leap forward. Her recent forward slash was an attack that only a select few, like the first Hassan, could have dodged. Had it been Mash, for instance, she would have had no choice but to raise her shield and brace for impact, only to be sent flying by the immense force, and that was only because her shield was the round table itself. Ruler, are you satisfied with just this? What else can I do? The first Hassan said my destiny hasn't arrived, and refused to kill me. I can't exactly shamelessly beg him to strike me down, can I? Besides, I've already gotten what I truly wanted. Mash and Ritsuka lay down on either side of Guinevere, the three of them gazing up at the starry sky and the festive fires of East Village. Gradually, Guinevere relayed the message the Lion King had entrusted to her. The next singularity was in a more ancient era, and its holy grail had been personally delivered by the King of Magecraft. Truthfully, Guinevere desperately wanted to reveal the truth about Dr. Romani and the King of Magecraft. But she knew that revealing it now would only create unnecessary complications, giving the demon god king, who was surely watching their journey, time to prepare. Mash, Ritsuka, I'll return the Holy Grail to you at dawn. If you need me in the next singularity, remember to summon me. Guinevere, who adored the story of absolute demonic beast front, Babylonia, simply wanted to experience that era for herself. She knew the Chaldea team would undoubtedly clear this instance. Ruler, I'll remember your words. If we need you, I'll definitely summon you. Lying on the left, Ritsuka spoke earnestly. She was delighted Guinevere was willing to continue helping. Mash, however, couldn't help but recall Guinevere's mischievous side, her audacity to demand honorifics from her elder sister. The thought of summoning Guinevere again made her anticipate a tumultuous journey ahead. Mash, Ritsuka, Da Vinci-chan is truly amazing. She even managed to create fireworks in this era. What do you say? Shouldn't we get up and enjoy them together? Tonight, let's all have a good time. Moments like this, where we don't have to worry about anything, are rare for us, aren't they? She pulled them to their feet, roughly tousled their hair, slung her arms around their shoulders, and shoved them forward, running toward East Village. Since first Hassan hadn't severed her head, allowing the singularity to persist a little longer, Guinevere resolved to enjoy every last moment. Laughter, revelry, and fireworks bloomed in the sky until the entire group gathered at the highest point in East Village to witness the glorious sunrise break over the horizon. Whether it was Chaldea's journey or Guinevere's own odyssey, both would continue. Chapter 190, The Throne of Heroes shared by two, volume end. 1,337 words. At the fringe of the counterforce, the Throne of Heroes. When Guinevere returned to this place, her memories of the journey merging fully into her original self, she couldn't resist rolling over on the plush velvet divan, leaping to her feet, and brandishing the replica holy sword. In the Throne of Heroes, which existed outside the flow of time, how long would it take Guinevere to master the return to simplicity she had witnessed? The answer eluded her, but she knew that day would come. Swing, swing. With the Lord of the Throne of Heroes' will, the environment transformed into Camelot City's training ground. Half a day later, the training ground reverted to her bedroom. Chandelier, television, large bathtub. The television replayed Guinevere's journey, from her summoning by Merlin to her encounter with the Chaldea party. In the time it took her to take a bath, she had only watched this much. It's so nice. I wish I could go out and play too. Normally, the heroic spirit summoned is a facet of the true self, a so-called avatar or servant. These avatars typically don't retain memories from their time as servants. Guinevere could bring back such memories only because she had actively returned to her true self. Though the avatar and true self are the same person, while the avatar goes out to play, the true self remains confined to the Throne of Heroes, essentially squatting on the toilet. The loneliness of the true self during this time is undiminished. Ah, if only Lia were here. Guinevere, I am here, you know. After her long life spent confined to the Throne of Heroes, it wasn't until the fierce battles in Fuyuki City that she was summoned for the first time. Guinevere had grown accustomed to solitude, and learned to talk to herself. It was during this long, lonely existence that she first heard another's voice within her own throne of heroes. She looked up, but her gaze drifted back down to her chest, realizing the voice was coming from within her. In the morning sun, atop the East Village, after returning the Holy Grail, everyone's figures gradually faded away. Guinevere was among the first to vanish, and during the process, she felt no indication that the King of Night's soul, which had shared her body, was departing. Was this a glitch? Or was it due to their shared body? In any case, the King of Night's soul, mixed within Guinevere's ruler-class body, returned with her to her throne of heroes. A faint glow materialized before Guinevere, forming the figure of the King of Knights. Still in the bathtub, her body lay fully exposed. There was no shyness, no evasion. They were familiar partners who had long since shared everything. Besides, the King of Knights also felt lonely, unable to physically touch Guinevere. "Tell me," the King of Knights demanded. "You licked Mash's nape, pecked Ritsuka, and kissed the Lion King's forehead. Are you tired of me already?" Ah! A barrage of questions flooded Guinevere's mind, leaving her utterly bewildered. Then she saw the King of Knights chuckle, paddle over, and pull her into a warm embrace. Mash and Ritsuka were her juniors, and when they were together, the King of Knights knew perfectly well that Guinevere was teasing them out of affection for her elders. As for the Lion King, regardless, she was still Artoria. At that moment, Guinevere had felt a pang of sympathy for her, unable to resist her longing for Artoria's presence after such a long absence of her elements. Besides, between the King of Knights and Guinevere, it was actually Guinevere who was actively restraining herself. To the King of Knights, a pure ancient soul, even if things were to become. "Guinevere, I wasn't entirely joking earlier. You're the one who made me this way, the one who made me possessive of you. You're the one who scolded me for not caring when you talked to Lancelot, so, if you were serious, I really would, well, I don't even know what I'd actually do." The King of Knights' vulnerability and tenderness were reserved solely for Guinevere's eyes. Yet the King of Knights needed no comforting from Guinevere. As a vice, who could match Guinevere 50-50, she would only crush any such sentiment before it could rise. But the moment their lips touched, the ripples in Guinevere's heart smoothed out. She knew no further explanation was needed, their mutual trust remained absolute. Afterward, the war raged on, the battlefield shifting endlessly. Yet because this was Guinevere's true form, and this place was also her throne of heroes, she ultimately secured an easy victory. On the velvet bed, they lay as always, fingers intertwined, gazing up at the sky. Once time had smoothed over the war's lingering scars, they finally discussed what came next. Guinevere's greatest gain from this singularity was undoubtedly the teachings of First Hassan. The King of Knights' greatest acquisition, on the other hand, was the memories of the Lion King. She needed to transfer these memories, along with those she had observed within Guinevere's mind, to her true self. "We're not professional mages, so we can't guarantee a perfect memory transfer. Besides, I don't want you to leave. Lia, just stay here with me." "I never said I wouldn't." Having witnessed Guinevere's fierce determination earlier, the King of Knights knew she wouldn't let her go. After experiencing Guinevere's millennia of solitude, the King of Knights couldn't bear to leave Guinevere's original self alone either. With this mutual understanding established, they next agreed on a method for transferring the memories. The plan was for the King of Knights to share her memories with Guinevere. When Guinevere was summoned by her caster counterpart, she would carry these memories down to her, and pass them on to the King of Knights by caster's side. On the large bed, it took them some time to sort out the details and figure out how to share the memories. They even encountered a few minor difficulties along the way. But because the throne of heroes existed outside the linear flow of time, they ultimately succeeded. For example, starting now, the TV screen would no longer show Guinevere's perspective, but would instead display the Lion King's memories acquired by the King of Knights. Meanwhile, in the present world, before ruler class Guinevere returned, she used the rainbow gem to notify her caster self. Thus began the proper human history timeline, where Guinevere rescued the King of Knights. In London, within the clock tower, Guinevere was conversing with Merlin, her gaze fixed on her elder sister Morgan, who stood poised to initiate the summoning ritual. Meanwhile, in the Pendragon family's magecraft workshop, Mordred watched the summoning array with anticipation, her hand clasped tightly in her father's. Heroic spirit summoning, unsupported by the Holy Grail system, was a form of grand magecraft. Even maintaining Mordred's existence, after her summoning required the clock tower to settle their substantial debt to the Pendragon family, allowing them to sustain her existence and commission a top-tier automaton body from a renowned puppeteer, on her behalf. Mordred's successful summoning, however, demonstrated that heroic spirit summoning outside the Holy Grail system posed no challenge to Merlin or Morgan. This time was different. Regardless of the class Guinevere was summoned into, she only needed to share her memories and return to the throne of heroes with the caster's newly acquired knowledge. Soon, the heroic spirit summoning was completed without incident. Shortly afterward, the fusion of the two Guineveres proceeded smoothly. Soon after that, the memories from the King of Knights' perspective were shared with her present self. "Leah, are you going to get angry this time too? Guinevere, do you think I'm foolish enough to get angry over the same thing twice?" Despite gaining an extra set of memories, they experienced no confusion regarding their identities. Fueled by these newly acquired memories, they rushed to the training ground, eager to clash their holy swords against each other. Chapter 191, Chapter 191, Modern Era, King of Knights, Family. 1,376 words. Spring turned to autumn, and 3 years slipped by unnoticed. During this time, Guinevere still hadn't received a summons from Chaldea. However, this didn't mean Ritsuka no longer needed her, they simply hadn't reached the singularity in Babylon yet. During the Jerusalem singularity, Guinevere had initially assumed the two timelines had different rates of temporal flow. In reality, they were entirely parallel and independent timelines. Thus, any communication or exchange of items between them in different years relied solely on the power of Old Men of the Jewels, Merlin, and Morgan. Guinevere's ability to live in this timeline, while also being summoned from the other, despite the different years involved, stemmed from the unique nature of the Throne of Heroes. Ha! Leah, are you spacing out? In the suburban manor Guinevere had recently acquired outside London, the swords of she and the King of Knights clashed once more. For 3 years, Guinevere had resumed her habit of practicing swordsmanship for half a day. Her opponents included the King of Knights, Mordred, descendants of knights from the Camelot era, and various people who had gained access to information and the privilege of seeking her guidance. "Guinevere, I was just thinking about Grey." "What is it? Do you think I'm spoiling her too much? Are you jealous?" "Jealous? She's our adopted daughter, we both agreed on this." "Huh? Isn't that exactly what I meant? You're jealous of your youngest daughter, aren't you?" The young girl Grey, a descendant of the family who guarded Guinevere's tomb, currently held the Holy Lance. According to Morgan, Grey was actually a descendant of Gareth, one of the 12 Round Table Knights. At birth, she had been implanted with cells from the King of Knights, a product of her family's attempt to resurrect the king. However, with the King of Knights now alive and both Guinevere and Mordred standing here, Grey had become obsolete. If Guinevere hadn't personally visited her own tomb 3 years ago, Grey, whose appearance had completely transformed into Artoria's face due to the king's presence in the Fourth Holy Grail War, would have been destroyed by that family. Now, however, she was known as Grey Pendragon, Guinevere, and the King of Knights' second adopted daughter, and the third oldest among their children. "Exactly, father. How did you fall for the Queen Mother's tricks again?" Wearing denim hot pants, a cool tank top, and a fiery red cropped jacket, Mordred crouched like a monkey at the edge of the training ground, mocking the King of Knights. Hearing her laughter, Sakura glanced around and squeezed Grey's hand, who was half a year younger and nearly 10 years old. As Guinevere's eldest adopted daughter bearing the Pendragon surname, Sakura had long grown accustomed to Guinevere's playful nature. And as the elder sister, she felt responsible for taking good care of her newly acquired younger sister. With her black hair and white dress, Sakura Pendragon resembled a pristine white camellia. "It's all right, Liamama wasn't distracted out of jealousy. Due to her striking resemblance to Artoria, Grey had once been hailed as king, but the subsequent feeling of being unwanted had made her despise her own face. Over the past 3 years, however, as she grew increasingly similar to the King of Knights, Guinevere repeatedly pecked at her face, gradually easing Grey's resentment. For a time, she even stopped wearing her cloak. Until recently, when Mordred made a slip of the tongue, carelessly blurting out her inner thoughts. Father's face, mother's hair color, and being mother's direct descendant, it's truly enviable. After over 1,000 years, Grey and Gareth were only distantly related as ancestor and descendant, sharing no true familial bond. Yet none of this changed the fact that Gareth was Morgan's biological child, allowing Grey to address Morgan as her great-great-great-great-grandmother. Of course, due to Guinevere and the King of Knights' adoption, this grand lineage had been condensed into Aunt Morgan. Snapping out of her 3-year-old reverie, the still tiny Grey pulled her cloak's hood back up before murmuring to Sakura like a mosquito, "Thank you, elder sister." Elder sister will take even better care of you now. Just leave everything to me." Clenching her empty hand into a fist, Sakura cheerfully waved it. Before Grey came along, Rin had been her only elder sister, and she treasured Grey dearly. As the two girls chatted, Mordred pursed her lips, briefly considering offering an explanation. After a few seconds of internal conflict, she slumped back into her seat, propping her head up with her hand. She regretted blurting out that envious remark, but it was just her nature, she couldn't keep her thoughts bottled up. Still wrestling with her feelings, she finally stood up and deliberately walked over to Grey, wrapping her other arm around her. "Later tonight, I'll take you out to play. And I won't glare at you anymore, you can call me whatever you want, elder brother or elder sister." Compared to Sakura and Grey, Mordred looked like an adult. Yet, despite her age, she still felt insecure about her gender, bothered by being misidentified. Being around her was awkward. You couldn't treat her entirely as a woman, nor could you treat her completely as a man. It was just awkward. Yet beneath this awkwardness, she genuinely cared deeply for her family. She revered her father, feared her queen mother, pitied her mother, and wanted to set a good example as the eldest sister to her 2 newfound younger sisters. Once, she heard that someone in the clock tower's classroom had tried to rip off Grey's cloak, cornering Grey in the restroom to prevent her from leaving. The moment Mordred learned of this, she stormed to the perpetrator's home, shattered all their windows, and showing no mercy, gave the child a thorough thrashing. Of course, it was just a thrashing. "Sorry, Grey," she admitted, scratching her head. "I was really jealous. Who told you to look more like father and Queen Mother's child than me?" She had said these words before, but this time, she spoke plainly while scratching her hair. Grey's perception completely shifted. Though she didn't smile, the words no longer bothered her as much. She saw Sakura's encouraging nod and squeezed Mordred's hand in return, nodding while shrinking further into herself. The young Grey was still too shy. Hey. Lia, you're not worried anymore, right? So you knew all along why I was distracted, didn't you?" Swords clashed again and again as the King of Knights, fueled by anger, launched a relentless assault. Beside the training ground stood not only their 3 children but also Rin Tosaka, Waver Velvet, and Waver's adopted sister, Rhaenys, and Rin Tosaka's classmate, Luvia. Among these 4, Waver had already become an assistant instructor at the El Meloy classroom, serving as a master to the other 3, as well as Sakura and Grey. Nearly 5 years ago, after returning from the Fourth Holy Grail War, Waver had become Kenneth's formal disciple and borrowed an enormous sum of money from him to complete his studies. Predictably, his future would either involve selling himself to Rhaenys to pay off his debts, or working for the El Meloy family for half his life. Yet Waver welcomed this fate, for he had indeed stolen Kenneth's prepared holy relic during the Fourth Holy Grail War. Sheathing her sword, Guinevere ended the session. Though she had only stayed in the Jerusalem Singularity for 7 days, her return had occurred 2 years later in this world. Thus 5 years had passed since the Fourth Holy Grail War, and variant Holy Grail Wars were now erupting across the globe. Waver Velvet, how are the preparations for the Great Holy Grail War going, the one the Igmalenia family is helping to organize? To make this war possible, I even persuaded Mrs. Irisfield to allow the Igmalenia family to inspect the Fuyuki Greater Grail, and requested her assistance in providing data. Guinevere's current form, still composed of black mud, continued to elicit subconscious disdain from the King of Knights. This made securing the Holy Grail once again a matter of urgent necessity. Of course, the King of Knights wasn't repulsed by Guinevere herself, but rather, as a heroic spirit, she instinctively recoiled from all the world's evil. Chapter 192, Chapter 192, This Great War is No Joke. 1,260 words. When Guinevere proposed the idea of a 7-on-7 Holy Grail war, and sought the assistance of mages to prepare for it, news of the conflict quickly spread throughout the Clock Tower, the Holy Church, and other organizations. After learning more about the plan, the mages realized that Guinevere had chosen this format specifically to ensure her own victory in obtaining the Holy Grail. Guinevere would participate openly, and the King of Knights, Mordred and Morgan would also join, not as servants but as masters themselves. Thus, this battle wouldn't be a 7-on-7 clash, but rather a 14-on-7 scenario. Unless the opposing side possessed god-tier strength, victory would be utterly impossible. Therefore, alongside the 7-on-7 rule, Guinevere promised additional rewards to any mage willing to participate. Dragon bones from the Albion Spirit Tomb, Camelot-era mana cultivation methods, and even the King of Knight swordsmanship, these were all part of the incentives she offered. Following this announcement, her once deserted doorstep instantly transformed into a bustling hub. Many mages saw an opportunity. They could participate, summon a servant, immediately order it to commit suicide, and then pocket Guinevere's payment. Your Grace, the Igmalenia family has sent word that they have completed the construction of the Holy Grail system, and accelerated mana accumulation using the treasures you provided. The Great Holy Grail War should be ready to begin within about a month. However, they wish to apologize for one thing: they were unable to modify the master selection mechanism. The masters participating in the Great Holy Grail War will still be chosen solely by the Holy Grail. Waver nervously delivered the news about Guinevere's manor outside London. He wasn't sure how she would react. He just felt that if he were in her place, having invested time, energy, and money, only to have his efforts usurped, he would certainly be furious. But he was wrong. Guinevere was surprised, yes, but she didn't erupt in anger. Her confidence stemmed from her belief that she would be chosen by the Holy Grail. Even if she wasn't selected as a master, she was confident she could still participate in the war as a servant. Moreover, even in the worst-case scenario, Guinevere wasn't entirely surprised that the Igmalenia family would cause trouble. According to her memories and the information Kenneth had provided, the centenarian family head Darnik had long harbored a desire to break free from the Clock Tower's constraints and establish independence. By accepting the Holy Grail construction task, he had revealed his own ambition for the Grail. TCH, no matter, Guinevere scoffed. I'd already accounted for him as an opposing master. She sheathed her sword, stretched languidly, letting her silver-gray ponytail sway freely. Noticing Waver's astonishment, she continued. Mages will always be drawn to this Great Holy Grail War. It has the largest investment and the most orthodox construction data, making it far more likely to reach the root compared to other variant Holy Grail wars. Your Grace, are you saying that anyone who desires this Holy Grail must stand against you? Because you would never willingly relinquish it. So, the head of the Igmalenia family isn't incapable of designating masters. Instead, he's using this tactic to leave you with no recourse while gambling on whether he can exclude more of your family members. Waver was remarkably sharp, and his intellect only grew sharper with time. He quickly came to the same conclusion as Guinevere, and a certain desire began to stir within him. But first, he needed to confirm one thing. Your Grace, you've already deduced that the head of Igmalenia acted deliberately, yet you don't intend to intervene, do you? Waver, you honestly think I'd let some useless fool self-destruct and then effortlessly claim victory? Don't you think that would be a terrible waste? My swordsmanship cannot improve further without the crucible of life-or-death battles. As she spoke, Guinevere approached Mordred and ruffled her hair. "Don't worry, little M.O. You, Leah, and I will definitely participate together. If worst comes to worst, we can all serve as servants and join the war. Guinevere, I think you've wanted to fight as a servant from the very beginning." If the King of Knights had any doubts before, they vanished with these words. She now clearly understood her partner's true intentions. Guinevere hadn't enjoyed their previous skirmishes, she'd been itching for a real fight. From the start, she had never intended to fight 14 against 7, she only wanted a fair 7-on-7 battle. "Your Grace," Waver Velvet interjected, "would I have the honor of joining your team? I have no interest in the Holy Grail. I simply wish to fight alongside the King of Conquerors once more." Waver had entertained this idea earlier, but he only voiced his request after confirming Guinevere's desire for a true, all-out war. He refused to let the King of Conquerors participate in a mere game. "Waver, of course you may join our team," Guinevere replied. "You haven't forgotten our agreement to rematch the King of Conquerors, have you?" "I haven't forgotten. I've been secretly saving money all these years, just to buy you and the King of Conquerors a barrel of fine wine." "You've been secretly saving money. Does Rhaenys know about this?" Compared to 5 years ago, Waver had matured somewhat in both appearance and personality, but he hadn't yet become the overworked version of himself from 5 years later. Even when teased about his sore spots, he still wore a troubled expression. However, now that Guinevere had accepted him as a teammate, even if he were 100 times more distressed, he couldn't hide his joy. He desperately longed to see the King of Conquerors again. Besides Waver, Guinevere also planned to issue a recruitment notice, inviting mages chosen by the command spells to volunteer themselves. Meanwhile, far away in Romania, at the ancestral grounds of the Igmalenia family head Darnik was receiving a steady stream of guests. Among these guests, a father-daughter pair particularly caught his attention. The father, Kyrie Kodomine, was a former executor of the church, a participant in the Fourth Holy Grail War in Fuyuki City, and the notorious sinner who had stolen the true ancestor bloodline of Seal, the 7th seat of the church's burial agency, the Bow. Yet in the years since, he had evaded the church's pursuit, and simply opened a Mapo tofu shop in Fuyuki City, doing nothing of particular significance. Accompanying him was his daughter, Karen Hortensia, who was indeed his biological daughter. "Are you saying you intend to participate in this great Holy Grail war, and once again oppose Lady Guinevere?" "No, my sole target has always been Kiritsugu Emiya." "Will he be participating as well?" "For years, he's been rushing to battlefields, saving every life that falls within his reach. Such a man could never overlook this war, nor refuse Guinevere's invitation." "Then can you summon the King of Heroes again?" "The King of Heroes has already proven himself no match for Guinevere, and the King of Knights combined. So you'd best not overestimate your prepared holy relics. Few members of your family are qualified to participate in this war anyway." In the Igmalenia family's ballroom, family head Darnik remained silent, agreeing with most of Kyrie Kodomine's points. He knew that to obtain the Holy Grail, he needed more powerful allies. In any case, let's wait until the Holy Grail chooses its masters before making further plans. "But Kyrie Kodomine, I am willing to form an alliance with you. I want to learn more about Guinevere and the King of Knights' combat styles." Chapter 193, Chapter 193, Guinevere's Demons and Monsters. 1240 words. Irisville, are we really going to leave Ilya and Shiro behind in Fuyuki? Alright, Kiritsugu, I know you're worried, but didn't we decide to let them grow up like ordinary people? We can't take them with us. We haven't even told them about mages. Trust Sella and Lacerit, they're no longer the battle-focused homunculi they were 5 years ago. Besides, Mia's still in Fuyuki, isn't she? From Fuyuki to London, Kiritsugu Emiya and Irisville von Einsburn chose to fly. As they emerged from the airport terminal, Guinevere was already waving at them, beckoning them to her car. Dressed in a short-sleeved shirt, jeans, and a baseball cap worn backward, Guinevere exuded an air of youthful energy. Irisville, on the other hand, wore a long white dress paired with a light-colored casual jacket. Her appearance hadn't aged a day in the past 5 years. Only Kiritsugu Amiya looked more haggard than before. Whether this was due to the brutal battlefields around the world, or the even more brutal battlefield of his own home in Fuyuki remained unclear. Yahalo. Long time no see, you too. After helping load the luggage, Guinevere's Umamuseum-themed electric car started up. As she drove, she greeted them warmly. Spy yes, Guinevere is cultured. Yes, I quadruple-checked. She is driving a Uma car. 5 years had passed, but Guinevere still drove with her characteristic steady hand. Now, however, she was strictly following traffic laws. Castor, long time no see. Kiritsugu Amiya had quit smoking, but he occasionally put an unlit cigarette in his mouth while speaking, showing off his newly acquired command spell. When the Great Holy Grail War began, when the Holy Grail began seeking those who coveted it, Kiritsugu Amiya was chosen once again, despite his belief that he had long abandoned his desire for the Grail. Besides him, 2 other members of the Guinevere family were directly selected by the Holy Grail, the King of Knights and Sakura. Among them all, Guinevere clearly yearned for the Holy Grail the most, yet she remained unchosen. Speaking of which, have you decided yet? Will you contract with Saber, or let her summon another servant? As for Sakura, are you certain you want Mordred to protect her? Castor, I must remind you, you may not want the war to be too one-sided, but you are already materialized servants. Even if you contract with masters and participate in the war, you won't occupy the servant slots. They can still summon additional servants. Irisville and Kiritsugu sat in the back seat. Irisville naturally rested her head on Kiritsugu's shoulder. As the homunculus created for the Holy Grail War, she possessed the most comprehensive understanding of its intricacies. I know, but this possibility remains as insurance. To be honest, I'm very confident in myself. You might call it arrogance, but my mind is clear. I know some mages will treat this battle as a fight to the death. During the 4th Holy Grail War, Guinevere saved Kenneth's life. How could she possibly repeat his holier-than-thou mistake? Guinevere knew she was strong, but not yet among the absolute elite. Even facing First Hassan again, she lacked the confidence to win. Therefore, when she said insurance, she truly meant it. Her first priority in this battle was to confirm the identities of both sides' servants and masters. Let's start with her side. Master 1, Sakura Pendragon, servant, Saberclass Mordred. Master 2, Artoria Pendragon, servant, Castorclass Guinevere. Master 3, Morgan Le Fay, servant, Lancerclass Gareth. Master 4, Waver Velvet, servant, the King of Conquerors Iskandar, still as rider. Master 5, Kiritsugu Amiya, that's you. Master 6, Shiki Tano, a seemingly ordinary high school student recommended by Aoko Aozaki, the 5th magician. His stated purpose is to work and earn money. Master 7, unfortunately, he hasn't reported to me yet. As for your and Shiki Tano's servants, I'm unsure whether you've already summoned them. In the back seat of the car, Irisville and Kiritsugu listened intently to Guinevere's words. After she finished, they exchanged glances. Irisville cleared her throat, preparing to speak on their behalf. Kiritsugu has already summoned his servant, she began, but we suspect there was a summoning error. The archer he summoned claims to have lost his memory, and seems utterly bewildered by the current situation. He even confused Kiritsugu for his father. When we came to London, he wanted to explore a bit more, so we allowed him to join us later. I suppose the archer class's independent action skill is simply too useful. Returning to a few days prior, Guinevere had been astonished when Aoko Aozaki showed up at her door. Aoko reminded her of the favor she owed Toko Aozaki for creating Mordred's physical body, and recommended Shiki Tano as a master. This Shiki Tano was the protagonist of another Type Moon series. He was destined to forge a connection with Arcuade, the princess of the dead apostles, and wield the ultimate mystic eyes, the mystic eyes of death perception. Upon hearing that Kiritsugu had summoned an amnesiac archer who called him Dad, Guinevere nearly slammed on the brakes. Regaining her composure, she couldn't help but ask. Does he have a healthy complexion? Is he wearing a red robe made from the Holy Shroud? Castor, no. Guinevere, do you know him? Is he also from Camelot? No, he's more closely connected to you. But I think it would be more interesting if you discovered his true identity yourselves. Guinevere's mischievous streak was acting up again, but she genuinely wanted to see Irisville and Kiritsugu's expressions when they realized the archer they had summoned was none other than Shiro Amiya. Their adopted son Shiro was only 10 years old now, a model student, and an exceptionally well-behaved child. He had never shown any interest in magecraft or talked about becoming a hero of justice. Earlier that year, when Guinevere had returned to Fuyuki to visit them, she had noticed how overwhelmingly popular Shiro was with girls. Even Rin and Livia, who had only met him a few times, had already fallen for him. Ahem, now that you've summoned your servant, let's move on to discussing the other masters. What about Shikitano, the one the fifth magician sent? Just then, Guinevere's phone rang. Seeing Morgan's name on the caller ID, she answered on speakerphone. Over the past few years, Morgan had met Irisville, Kiritsugu, and the others as well. Hey, Guinevere, did you get him? Shikitano has summoned his servant, and the results are quite peculiar. He summoned Berserker, a berserk princess of the moon. Currently, Merlin and I have suppressed her into a deep slumber and sealed her in a coffin for now. I doubt you'll be able to use her in this great Holy Grail war. When she goes berserk, not even a command spell can restrain her. The seventh master has also arrived. He's an executor from the Holy Church, Kirii Kotomine's foster brother, and the adopted son of the late Risei Kotomine. Rumor has it he's here to avenge Risei. His name is Shiro Kotomine. Ah! The ah came from Kiritsugu Amiya, who overheard Morgan implying that Kirii Kotomine had joined the Great Holy Grail War and defected to the opposing camp. As for Guinevere, she nearly lost control of her composure. She hadn't wanted this Holy Grail War to be boring, but she certainly hadn't expected so many demons and monsters to show up, and all on her side, no less. Chapter 194, Chapter 194, Morgan, Leah, Guinevere. 1,383 words. Half an hour later, Guinevere was back at the manor outside London. After bringing her guest, she immediately sought out Morgan and Leah. In this great Holy Grail war, she was the commander, general, and strategist. She had to do everything, and she wanted to do everything. For far too long, Guinevere had lived days of training in the morning, drawing manga in the afternoon, and only finding free time in the evening. In the classically decorated dining room, lit by flickering candles, over half of the 10 hearty courses had already been devoured. Even with her physical body, Leah still ate voraciously. Merlin's gone again, hasn't he? He's off chatting with that Merlin from the other timeline. Apparently, that Merlin is on a marathon, planning to walk all the way to Babylon from 6,000 years ago. Ha! Guinevere remembered that in the singularity of the demonic beast front, Merlin should have been summoned first by the King of Heroes. Only after being dismissed once did he flee back to Avalon. How? Shaking her head, Guinevere decided not to dwell on it. Even if she were summoned by the other timeline, the one who would go there would still be the main body currently seated on the throne of heroes, who periodically receives her memories. She didn't need to overthink things. All she needed to focus on was the Holy Grail war at hand. Sister Morgan, what about the berserker you and Merlin sealed? As she spoke, Guinevere pulled up a chair and sat down, then picked up a knife and fork to cut off a piece of rare beef. Using her imaginary creation ability, she ignited a flame and slowly cooked the beef to a more well-done state. She wasn't particularly fond of eating things too raw. Watching her, Morgan, clad in a shirt and short skirt that accentuated her prominent curves, leaned back, further accentuating her curves. After catching the apple the King of Knights had tossed her, she took a playful bite and remarked, I sent Shikitano back. He possesses the mystic eyes of death perception. If push comes to shove, he can easily kill his servant. Guinevere opened her mouth to reply, then closed it again. Her fragmented memories from her previous life contained only scattered remnants of Tsukihime. She wasn't even sure if her recollection of Shiki Tano was accurate. Right now, she remembered that Shiki Tano wasn't originally named Tano at all. He was a member of the Nanaya family, a demon-hunting family annihilated by the Tano family. The Nanaya family were demon-hunting specialists, skilled not only in combat against creatures like vampires, but also in human-targeted assassination techniques using short blades. As for Shiki Tano himself, after being adopted by the Tano family, his memories were sealed, and he grew up as their foster son. It wasn't until his foster brother, Shiki Tano, experienced an inversion impulse due to his bloodline. While protecting one of their foster sisters, Shiki was killed, and the sister shared her life force with him. Revived from death, he awakened the mystic eyes of death perception. According to the information Aoko Aozaki provided, she gave Shiki Tano the mystic eye killer's glasses, which could seal his mystic eyes of death perception. Once his condition improved slightly, she recommended he work here to pay off his debt. Aoko said that one shift here would cover the cost of the mystic eye killers he'd pre-ordered. So he came straight here after being discharged from the hospital. Exactly. Morgan slammed the dossier Kenneth had compiled onto the table in front of Guinevere. Because it was delivered directly to Guinevere, and arranged by Aoko Aozaki, one of the magicians. The Tano family head couldn't voice a single objection, and was forced to tacitly approve the arrangement. As Guinevere flipped through the file, the King of Knights, who had nearly finished eating, fed her. She cross-referenced what she knew from this life with her memories from her previous life, forming a rough assessment of Shiki Tano. Having been sent to participate in the Great Holy Grail War, he hadn't undergone a second memory sealing. His combat skills honed within the Tano family remained intact, and he still remembered the accident that had claimed his life once before. Moreover, after learning about the Holy Grail and realizing Guinevere could potentially grant his wishes, he began yearning to cure his foster brother's inversion and restore the half of her life that his foster sister, Akiha Tano, had sacrificed to save him. So he's been quite motivated these past few days. Exactly. He's even become quite close with Waver, and has been asking him for tutoring. Feeding isn't the King of Knights' forte. After yet another overly deep bite, Guinevere, her face full of gentle reproach, stood up and moved her chair closer to the king, taking over the feeding herself. It's your favorite rice. Even after a century together, the King of Knights still blushed at such teasing, but she didn't back down. Feigning composure, she swallowed the spoonful, leaving only a few glistening grains for Guinevere. Then, Guinevere scooped up another spoonful of rice, but this time, she fed it to herself, holding the spoon in her mouth for an uncomfortably long moment before withdrawing it. Guinevere, you fool. Are you two flaunting your affection in front of me again? Morgan snapped. Sister, you should be used to it by now, Guinevere retorted. She was indeed accustomed to it, but habit didn't diminish her annoyance. Tapping her knuckles on the table, Morgan forcibly drew her companion's attention back to her. Plucking a strand of lake gray hair, she declared, if you don't want my help, I can leave. After all, I wasn't chosen by the Holy Grail because I have any grand desires. Hearing this, Guinevere stuck out her tongue, while the King of Knights subtly stepped on Guinevere's foot. They subtly widened the distance between them, and the King of Knights assumed a more solemn demeanor, regaining the regal bearing she had possessed when she still ruled. Morgan's wish was simple. She longed for closer bonds with her family. For example, she wished Guinevere and the King of Knights wouldn't deliberately maintain their distance due to her past. She wanted Mordred to let go of her resentment and stop dwelling on her past as a failed successor. She also hoped Gareth wouldn't be so intimidated by her, stammering whenever she spoke to her. Leah. Yes, we should have done this sooner. Through their conversation and mutual gaze, Guinevere and the King of Knights reached an understanding. Ever since Morgan had resolved her inner conflicts, she had truly gone above and beyond for them both, proving herself a proper elder sister. Sister Morgan, let's take a bath together tonight. Guinevere had an artificial hot spring installed. You don't mind? We're all girls. As long as we don't go to bed together, what's there to mind? In fact, minding it would be more of a problem. Speaking and thinking, the King of Knights rounded the dining table and approached Morgan from behind. Mimicking Guinevere's gesture, she reached out and embraced Morgan's shoulders. Sister, we agreed we'd take a bath together tonight. Now that she knew Morgan's wish was so simple, she needed to act practically and prevent her from pinning such a small matter on the Holy Grail. As for how she knew Morgan harbored these wishes, the answer lay in daily observation. Morgan genuinely yearned for closer bonds with her family. Orphaned at a young age, betrothed as a teenager, and widowed before marriage in her early adulthood, Morgan bore children who never truly loved her. It wasn't until she resolved her inner conflicts that Mordred, whom she had conceived with Guinevere, and the King of Knights, became the closest to her heart. Yet, even after over 1,000 years, Morgan still harbored lingering regrets from her past. Foolish sister, I accept your invitation. Just the two of us. No, I'll invite little M.O., Sakura, Gray, and Mrs. Irisville as well. Tonight, after the bath, we'll have a girls' night chat. We're flying to Romania by the day after tomorrow at the latest, so we need to give Gray and the others instructions before we leave. Chapter 195, Chapter 195, Amakusa Shiro and the Empress of Assyria. 1,242 words. Shiro Kodo mine. Lady Guinevere, you may call me Amakusa Shiro Tokisada. That was my name before I became a heroic spirit. Taking a bath would have to wait. After reaching an agreement with Morgan and sending invitations to Mordred and the others, Guinevere first went to a secluded corner of the manor, where she met her side's seventh master. Just as Guinevere was about to put on an act, the brown-skinned youth from the Holy Church, clad in a black priest's robe with a red surplice, showed no inclination to play along. He revealed his true name and performed the most reverent clerical salutation for Guinevere. Over time, the Holy Church had become a melting pot, with various denominations and mysteries from across the world clashing within its ranks, creating deep divisions. Particularly after the Fourth Holy Grail War in Fuyuki, the British Purification Plan explicitly declared that Guinevere was its founder, making any hostility toward her an act of war against the entire movement. As a result, the Holy Church was openly split into two factions regarding Guinevere. Amakusa Shiro Tokisada, driven by his profound thirst for and pursuit of goodness, firmly sided with those who believed in Guinevere, recognizing her as the Lord's holy maiden, just as the Purification Plan did. Yes, though the Holy Church had yet to officially recognize her as such, and Guinevere herself showed no interest in being the Lord's holy maiden, neither mattered to her followers. Lady Guinevere, your silence persists. Is it because you have nothing to say to me? When Guinevere first heard the name Shiro Kodo mine, she wasn't particularly surprised. Different timelines often produce similar individuals, alternate versions of the same person, resembling each other yet fundamentally distinct. But when she finally met him face to face, and heard the name spoken aloud, Guinevere became certain he was the Shiro Kodo mine from Fate/Apocrypha, not a counterpart from this world. Simultaneously, her curiosity about the man before her deepened. No, I was merely pondering your purpose in revealing your true name, and how you achieved incarnation. In Guinevere's memory, during the events of Fate/Apocrypha, Amakusa Shiro had been one of the last surviving servants of the Third Holy Grail War in that timeline. By sheer luck, he had touched the Greater Grail, and thus gained a physical body. Afterward, he patiently waited and prepared for 60 years, until the Ig Millennia clan from another world had fully charged the stolen Greater Grail, and initiated their own Fourth Holy Grail War. If things proceeded as expected, his wish would still be for the salvation of all humanity, for the fusion of all mankind into a single entity. Miss Guinevere, you may be mistaken about one thing. While I am indeed the seventh master on your side, I am also your overseer. I was summoned by possessing the Shiro Kodo mine of this world. Though he appears young, he is actually over 50 years old. Ha! This shouldn't be surprising, right? The Church has many methods for prolonging life and maintaining youth. Right, to avoid any further misunderstandings, let me repeat myself, my class is ruler. I am the overseer of the Red faction in this great Holy Grail war, and after being summoned and possessed, I was chosen by the Holy Grail as the 7th master of the Red faction. This great Holy Grail war was conceived by Guinevere, and its rules and the Fate/Apocrypha series used as design references differ in some ways. For instance, to ensure fairness, the Holy Grail summons not one, but 2 rulers as overseers, each belonging to opposing factions. This way, even if one ruler prioritizes fairness, the other ruler can mirror that approach, maintaining a superficial balance between the sides. And what do these rulers oversee? Naturally, they monitor whether the masters and servants on both sides are properly participating in the Holy Grail war, preventing situations where they give up immediately after being summoned and simply wait to die. Well, this can also be seen as Guinevere's insurance measure against masters who are only interested in the rewards. From the very inception of the Holy Grail War's design, she had wanted not only the Holy Grail, but also a thoroughly exhilarating battle. So you're saying you're both the ruler and my side's master? That's quite fair. Guinevere wasn't confident in the ruler's fairness, but this particular ruler had been biased from the start, which genuinely surprised her. Tell me then, she said. What is your wish? And which servant do you plan to summon? Among the 7 class slots on our side, only assassin remains unclaimed. As she spoke, Guinevere already knew the most likely servant he would summon. Unlike those who had lingered in this world for 60 years, he had only recently been summoned through possession. Even if he could summon the same servant from Fate/Apocrypha, the dual-class Empress Semiramis, he wouldn't be able to recreate the Hanging Gardens for her. Summoning her would be pointless. However, Amakusa Shiro didn't answer directly. He glanced out the window at the sky, confirming it was still early, before saying, Lady Guinevere, I request some time to recount a tale from another world line, the story of the Great Holy Grail War in which I participated. Seated at the table in her room, Guinevere took a sip of tea to soothe her throat. Upon hearing Amakusa Shiro's words, her eyes widened, and she erupted into a violent coughing fit. After waving away his hand as he tried to pat her back and finally calming down, she vaguely sensed what he was about to say. For an hour, Amakusa Shiro recounted the story of another timeline, the complete narrative of Fate/Apocrypha that Guinevere already knew. So you've abandoned your wish to save all of humanity, and now simply want to meet the Empress of Assyria again. It wasn't until my previous failure, and after researching your story with Kiritsugu Amiya in the church's archives, that I considered living for myself. It was then that the command spell appeared on the back of my hand. I believe this is a revelation bestowed upon me by the Lord. Indeed, Amakusa Shiro had already suffered a crushing defeat once, and his heart had been touched by the Empress of Assyria. His wish had fundamentally changed. Lady Guinevere, I humbly request your permission to summon Semiramis. Even if she cannot contribute much to this battle, I will compensate for her missing combat strength with my own power. Guinevere set down her teacup and pressed a hand to her forehead. Had anyone else made this request, or had Guinevere possessed even slightly less confidence in herself, she likely would have rejected Amakusa Shiro's wish outright. But after hearing his thoughts and feelings, sensing his regret and longing for the Empress of Assyria, how could Guinevere possibly refuse? Besides, the wealth Amakusa Shiro had spent 60 years accumulating in another timeline was merely a drop in the ocean for Guinevere. Thanks to her family's contract with the clock tower, the Pendragon lineage was wealthier than the entire clock tower itself. I grant your request. After all, I'm a pure love warrior myself. Amakusa Shiro, should I prepare a wedding for you too? Ah? No need for that. I'm a clergyman, and our relationship hasn't reached that stage yet. Besides, after summoning her, I can't be certain if she'll retain memories of that great war. I see. Then hold on to hope and await her arrival. Chapter 196, Chapter 196, Leah, the moon is truly beautiful. 1263 words. That night, after soaking in the hot spring, Guinevere and the King of Knights donned their yukata and sat together at the manor's highest point, twirling sparklers. "Leah, didn't I tell you soaking in the hot spring would be so relaxing? If you'd stop staring at my sister like that, I'd be even more relaxed. But we're all girls. We should be comfortable around each other. Besides, I invited them here to build camaraderie. If I kept looking away on purpose. But you can't stare intently and then start comparing yourself to her, can you? Isn't that just what girls do? When bathing together, they're bound to talk about figures and stuff, right? I get it now, you're just salty about losing. You can't win against her now, but you'll definitely crush her when you're older." Guinevere's silver tongue left the King of Knights speechless. She playfully nudged her with a gentle bump of her shoulder, but inwardly, she couldn't help but wonder if Guinevere's words held some truth. From childhood, she had been raised as a boy. When she drew the sword in the stone, and wandered the land in her white lily dress, Kay and Merlin were her only companions. The King of Knights genuinely didn't know whether girls talked about each other's figures while bathing together. "Guinevere, it was my sister's fault for coveting us." "Pfft. Yes, let's just say that. Sulking Leah is so adorable." Firework blossoms bloomed in their hands, dancing sparks that burned to ashes, leaving only the smell of gunpowder and charred sticks. "Leah, the moon is so beautiful tonight." It was mid-month, and the moon over London was exceptionally round. Under the clear, starlit sky, everything within sight seemed bathed in frosty moonlight. "Leah, the moon is so beautiful tonight." When the King of Knights didn't react to her first remark, Guinevere emphasized her second sentence, even forcing Leah's small face to turn towards her. In the moonlight, the King of Knights' cheeks flushed faintly, her curved cowlick bobbing playfully. Clearly, the King of Knights had heard her words and understood their meaning. Without turning away or swatting away Guinevere's hands cupping her face, she reached out and wrapped her arms around Guinevere's waist. Leaning forward slightly, she pressed their lips together in a kiss. Since their wedding, they had kissed countless times, yet each new kiss still made their hearts flutter, evoking fresh sensations. After a long moment, their lips parted, drawing out a glistening strand of saliva. Guinevere, beaming, watched the King of Knights turn away and said, "Ah, the moonlight is beautiful tonight." "Ha he, ha ha ha, keh. Hey, try to laugh a little more seriously." As she spoke, the King of Knights attempted to mask her flustered state with a stern expression, deliberately keeping her tone even. But when Guinevere playfully pinched the soft flesh of her waist, she jerked as if struck by lightning, causing Guinevere's laughter to grow even more unrestrained. Watching Guinevere collapse backward, rolling on the tiled roof in fits of laughter, the King of Knights couldn't help but smile. She shook her head before leaning back, still smiling, to lie beside her. "Guinevere, do you think we can win?" "I'm confident we can. But even if we lose, it won't matter, right? Even if we die again, we can just have Merlin or Sister Morgan summon us back. Next time, we'll be more careful and make sure everyone participating in the Great Holy Grail War is on our side. With the profits from the Albion Spirit Tomb, we can afford to fail 10 more times without wasting our resources. You just have an itch to fight, don't you?" Guinevere stopped laughing and rolling around, no longer denying the King of Knights' conclusion. Ever since she returned from the Camelot singularity as ruler, she had been pondering how to achieve, return to simplicity, and how to take another step closer to First Hassan's Sword of Death. Now, her first step was to validate her years of training in a life-or-death battle. As for the King of Knights, she had acquired the Lion King's memories, but her mastery of the Holy Lance far surpassed her skill with the Holy Sword. It was worth remembering that her current class was Saber. "Leah, did you retrieve Grey's Holy Lance?" I've got an itch to fight too." "But you're the master. You can't just jump into the fray. Besides, if you use the lance, won't your luck drop to rank E?" Even the Lion King's luck wasn't rank E, was it? Guinevere stuck out her tongue, not caring whether the King of Knights saw. Moments later, as dark clouds began to obscure the full moon in the sky, the King of Knights suddenly recalled something. the first command spell Guinevere had used on her as her master during the Fourth Holy Grail War in Fuyuki. Lost in thought, the King of Knights raised her hand, gazing at the sword-like command spell on the back of her hand. She spoke, her voice clear and firm. Guinevere, by the power of this command spell, I order you, tonight, in bed, you shall only be on the bottom. Guinevere was stunned, utterly incredulous. She had never imagined the King of Knights would expend her first command spell for such a purpose, especially at this moment. Yet, did she dislike it? Not at all. Even if she had to stay on the bottom tonight, that only meant this was a playful indulgence between them, it didn't dictate their usual dynamic. Lia, you're really something else. Then I'll leave it all to you tonight. Without resistance, Guinevere allowed the command spell to take effect, resigning herself to stillness. The King of Knights, feigning annoyance, scooped her up and scurried back to the bedroom. Morgan and the children were still in the hot spring. They had snuck away earlier, and if they were caught sneaking back to the bedroom now, both women would lose face entirely. But as fate would have it, the moment the King of Knights carried Guinevere through the bedroom door and flipped on the light, they found Morgan, Mordred, Sakura, and the others, all clad in bathrobes. I can't sense your presence here. I thought you were all still in the hot spring room. Lady Morgan, is this your doing? In the room, Gareth, a centimeter shorter than the King of Knights, covered her face. She had been summoned in her 12-year-old form, her emerald eyes framed by blushing cheeks. Witnessing the King and Queen's intimacy was still too early for her. Sakura and Gray had secretly helped Guinevere organize her sketchbooks, so they were already well versed in theoretical positions. Ahem, since everyone's here, let's discuss our vanguard for this great Holy Grail War. Shiki Tano and Amakusa Shiro remain unreliable for now. Kiritsugu Amiya's servant hasn't arrived yet, and Waver's King of Conquerors isn't suited for vanguard reconnaissance. So Mordred, can I entrust you with this vanguard role? I want you to charge straight into the enemy lines and force out their servants as quickly as possible. It wasn't just the King of Knights and Guinevere who were itching for action. Mordred was also fed up with daily schoolwork and babysitting, even though she adored her two foster sisters. She sprang to her feet with characteristic nonchalance, exchanged a determined glance with Sakura, who was equally eager to go, and together the master-servant pair declared happily. Father, Queen Mother. Mama Lia, Mama Guinevere. Leave it to us. ×2. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.